Remember candy. Focus on the candy. Okay, let's go trick or treat now. Come on.
Welcome to the Young Turks. Later in the program, we will be talking about Republicans saying this and Democrats saying that. There are great injustices, but we will not care. And mainly, we will ask, how are you going to pay for that? As you can tell, my outfit is mainstream media anchor. Welcome to Halloween.
Yay, happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
I didn't try at all.
Okay. I do mainstream media anchor every year. All right, it's a little bit of fun. Okay, we do have Halloween stories for you guys tonight.
We're gonna start off with a Halloween story. That did not last as long as I expected it to last. So just a production note, we will do one of the impeachment stories in this segment.
Yeah, and so look, so whenever I say something's gonna be quick, Anna never believes me.
I thought that was gonna be like at least 7 minutes long.
No, I told you it was gonna be like 10 to 20 seconds. Anyway, all right, listen guys. Later in the program, in all seriousness, bad numbers for Donald Trump, which of course I celebrate.
Not good.
Not good. A Democratic senator says he might not vote for Bernie Sanders in a presidential election.
Definitely not good.
Okay.
And irritating.
Yes. So we will have fun. We will have rage. So in fact, it is the Young Turks.
Yeah.
Okay, Anna.
So since it's Halloween, I figured we can start off with a fun Halloween story. And this one, believe it or not, does include the Trump. So Donald and Melania Trump handed out Halloween candy earlier this week in order to celebrate Halloween, take part in the festivities. And the video you're about to watch explains how Donald Trump not only fails at governing, he fails at Halloweening. Take a look.
I don't know why he bounced it, and we don't know why Melania thought that was a good idea as well.
But why?
And then Trump laughs like,
but they have bags.
Of course they do. You don't put it on top of the kid's head.
Has he never handed out Halloween candy before?
I mean,
was that his way of being playful? Maybe we're being too tough on him. Maybe he wins at Halloween.
Okay, so look, he's a weirdo. Okay, he total weirdo. Like if he did, look, guys, this is not a serious story. There's literally a billion things he does worse. But while we're having fun, like if he just bounced it on the kid's head a little bit, nothing wrong with that. And then he puts it in the bag, he's having fun. Maybe Melania does the same thing, boing, 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 puts it in the bag, fun. But then I wanna watch it again, because then they place it there like as if it belongs there. And then when it falls, Trump kind of smirks like, that'll show the kid.
Look at him looking for a handout.
Yeah, trick or treat. I'm Donald Trump, trick. Right. He takes that pretty literally. Probably has his whole life. Let's take a look at it one last time because it's fun.
Yeah.
So it's nothing wrong with being playful in the beginning, right?
All right.
Okay.
And the guy is dressed as a minion from Despicable Me.
And by the way, I just realized Spider-Man didn't even get anything.
Oh, poor kid.
And then Trump's laughing like, that's on the ground. Got you, trick.
How cute are little kids?
They're adorbs.
They're just so innocent and they don't know any better. They don't know that he's a monster.
Well, they probably thought he just dressed as one for Halloween.
Yeah.
They're like, mommy, look at the man dressed as an orange buffoon. And she's like, no, he's dressed as a monster. A little bit different.
You know, Trump is really undergoing a witch hunt. He can't do anything right. We're constantly going after him over everything.
See, no. Like that would have been clever, and I would have given him all the credit in the world if Melania dressed as a witch and kept chasing him around, so that it was a witch hunt. Okay.
If he had the ability to laugh at himself, or if he had a sense of humor, yeah, that would be awesome. Except he has none of that.
Of course. Yeah. Later in the program, we'll talk about how Melania might not be that big a fan of Donald Trump. And in the post game, speaking of fans, we're going to talk about how the Washington National fans, after they won, do an awesome job of embarrassing Donald Trump.
So good,
Post game is for the members. TYT.com/join to become a member and check out the last half hour of the Young Turks every day. That's just for members.
So we have one more video to show you. This one features a little girl who seems to be clever. She's scheming for more candy.
Oh, she caught it.
She caught it.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, she comes back for
more. And then she comes back. Oh, she's such a sneaky squirrel.
Oh, I love it.
Oh my God, that's my new favorite person on earth. She's the only one, like Trump usually scams other people, right?
Yeah,
and she's like, oh, you wanna scam people? Oh yeah, whoop. And oh, hey, how you doing?
So good.
Okay, she should start a university and a charity.
Okay. Let's get to the actual news because some big things did happen today and there are some updates to the impeachment investigation. So, the House officially held a vote to formalize the impeachment process. Now, there are some really important aspects to this, even though I think it was a terrible idea for Nancy Pelosi to cave into what Republicans had been demanding. Now, Republicans, as we all know, were complaining that all of the testimony was done behind closed doors, even though that was perfectly legal, even though that was something that John Boehner fought for and accomplished back in 2015 during the Benghazi investigations. Now they're complaining about process and Nancy Pelosi says, fine, we're gonna hold a formal impeachment vote. This is not the actual impeachment vote, it's just a vote to formalize the process. And the vote did pass. 232 to 196 to approve a resolution that sets out rules for an impeachment process. Now this was split between party lines with 2 Democrats defecting and voting against the impeachment process. Now, practically speaking, the resolution outlines the rights and procedures that will guide the process from here on out, including the public presentation of evidence and how Trump and his legal team will be able to eventually mount a defense. But hold on, here's what really matters, and this is something that I think gets lost in a lot of the reporting. Democrats signaled that despite Republican opposition, they now have enough confidence in the severity of the underlying facts about Trump's dealings with Ukraine to start making their case for impeachment in public. So these hearings will now be held in public. The Trump administration will have an opportunity to defend itself. But I think the fact that Democrats now see this as severe enough to move forward to the next stage of the impeachment process is incredibly important.
So I think the Democrats actually gave the president too much here, but let me clarify a couple of things. First of all, Republicans crying all day, all night long about, oh, we don't have enough due process. Like, yeah, I know, you guys were looking to give due process to people in the criminal justice system all these decades, right? Hilarious. But anyway, most importantly here, let's go over the legal rules and what applies in this particular case. This is not a criminal trial. So it is political in its nature. It is, hey, is the president fit for political office or is he not? Depending on whether either committed crimes, or it doesn't even have to be crimes. It could be things that were outrageous, and high crimes and misdemeanors originally did not mean crimes. It meant things that basically deemed him unfit for office because he was taking advantage of his office and using it for personal gain. But in this case, we actually have legal crimes, but this is not a criminal case, it is a political case. So they don't have to follow the legal rules of a criminal case. So due process in that context is totally different, okay? Second of all, there is a trial, again, it's a political trial, but it's not in the House, it's in the Senate. So the House goes to impeach, then the Senate has a trial. So if Donald Trump is gonna get any due process, it should be in the Senate. And so I don't think that he's necessarily accorded any quote unquote due process as you would know it in a criminal case in the House impeachment hearings. So it's apples and oranges and doesn't necessarily apply. And then the Trump administration says, oh my God, we have to have our lawyers in every single thing, and we got to cross-examine witnesses, etc. And the Democrats give it to them. And I don't think they should have. Why? Because are Republicans removed from the process? And my God, this is gonna be so unfair because it's just Democrats? No. The Republicans have been involved in the process from day one. Even in the testimony that was in private, not only did Republicans participate in it, but they had equal time. And they're going to continue to have equal time based on their representation in the rest of the proceedings. So when you hear them like cry as if they're not part of the process, that's totally not true. They have been part of the process from day one. So Donald Trump has 197 advocates, foaming at the mouth advocates in the House that'll try to shred every witness. So it's not like, oh, poor Donald Trump, will no one defend him? So all of these arguments are total and utter horse crap.
Well, here's the thing. These are arguments that were made prior to the House passing this formal impeachment vote. However, the Republicans haven't changed their tune at all. Of course they haven't. I mean, their whole plan is to continue fighting this impeachment investigation tooth and nail. They continue to avoid talking about the substance of this investigation, including the damning testimony that's been given by members of Trump's own administration. But they are, again, focusing on the process. It's an unfair process, even though, again, for the billionth time, this process is going the way that it is supposed to go. The relevant committees, which consist of both Democrats and Republicans, are doing this the right way. They aren't doing anything unlawful. But nonetheless, even after the vote, you have House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy making ridiculous statements like this.
We just had a vote on the floor. In March of this year, Speaker Pelosi said this about impeachment. Impeachment is so divisive to the country that unless there's something so compelling and overwhelming and bipartisan, I don't think we should go down that path because it divides the country. Today, the country just witnessed the only bipartisan vote on that floor was against.
Quite honestly, the vote should have been bipartisan because, again, you have damning testimony from now numerous members of Trump's own administration saying that he did engage in a quid pro quo. He did withhold military funding for Ukraine. That was money that was appropriated by Congress. And what he wanted in return was an investigation into his political rival, Joe Biden, and his son, Hunter Biden. But they're the ones that are making this a partisan issue. Republicans will stop at nothing to defend Donald Trump because Republican voters will stop at nothing to support Donald Trump and defend him.
So look, Nancy Pelosi is a terrible tactician.
Yes, she is.
And we don't say that as Monday morning quarterbacks. We told you at the time when she made that quote, we said, why would you say that? Why would you say it has to be overwhelming and set this incredibly high bar for no reason? When there's already been clear criminality, he's in the other party. Why are you weirdly trying to defend him? But the worst part of it is when she said it has to be bipartisan. On what planet would the Republicans in good faith care about the facts and work with you to achieve truth and justice?
Exactly.
No, I mean, you'd have to be really the dumbest person on earth that knows nothing about politics to think that the Republicans would be like, oh, Nancy, you're right, you guys got him. Man, that is really quid pro quo. And he really did ask a foreign government. So okay, yes, let's make it bipartisan. Do you really believe that? And for all of you kiss asses in the media that always go along with her master legislator nonsense, did you think that was a master legislator move to say, oh my God, I'm only gonna do impeachment if it's bipartisan? And now, of course, she does impeachment because she has to. She got forced into it because he committed his 4th felony, right? And of course the Republicans don't vote for it. So look, this has been going on for the last 2 decades at least. So when Obama said, oh no, if I win re-election, the fever will break and the Republicans will work with me.
Oh, come on.
I mean, it was preposterous. You know what the Republicans suckered Obama into doing? They're like, oh, we want to do a grand bargain. So if you promise to cut Social Security, then maybe we'll, raise taxes on the rich, and but you have to cut Social Security and Medicare. So Obama, like a sucker, went out publicly and said, yeah, I might cut Social Security. And the Republicans like, idiot, we're not gonna do any of that. We're never gonna raise taxes on the rich. They then use that in political ads against Obama. They say, see, we told you the Democrats want to take away your Social Security. So, but the Democrats cannot be this stupid. They cannot constantly fall into the same trap. It's like Charlie Brown. Oh my gosh, she took the ball away. I couldn't see that coming. Only after a million times. So, and I ask you guys this too. If you've been watching the Young Turks and you watch national television and you see the Democrats, how come nobody on the Democratic side ever makes the argument that we make, which is there are 2 crimes here. Soliciting help from a foreign country for your campaign, even without a quid pro quo, is clearly a crime. And then the quid pro quo is a second crime. You never hear them say that. And then you wonder, they can't make their own case. They oftentimes help the Republicans, full well knowing the Republicans will use it against them. What is wrong with them? My thesis is they are paid to lose, okay? Their donors are the same as the Republican donors, and the donors fund strong Republicans and weak Democrats, so they play good cop, bad cop on us, so the rich get everything they want. And by the way, what has happened in the Trump administration? What is the only thing that has passed? Massive trillions of dollars in tax cuts for the rich.
So I get you there. I don't know if I agree though that the corruption is what's leading to Democrats being so weak in regard to impeachment. I really think that it has everything to do with how scared they are that it'll lead to political backlash. Even though the polls indicate that the majority of Americans not only support the impeachment investigation, they actually support the removal of Donald Trump. Democrats have been scarred by what happened during the Newt Gingrich era. They're just by nature afraid, and I think that's what's pushing them to handle this the way that they are.
Yes, but with a huge asterisk. So Ryan Grimm also makes that case, not just the Newt Gingrich era, but the Ronald Reagan era. It's in his book, We've Got People. It's on our, you can buy it at shoptyt.com. It's a wonderful, really interesting book that lays out the history of the Democratic Party. But the asterisk is, yes, they're weak, they're ineffectual, all those things, but why? Because not about impeachment. Originally, the donor money flows to incredibly weak and ineffectual Democrats. And in fact, the weaker you are, the more money they give you. That's why Nancy Pelosi is the Speaker of the House, because she has raised $500 million from donors. Donors see her and they go, wow. And it's not conscious, guys, and it's not a conspiracy. It is subconscious. They see her and they go, now this is a person who believes in gay rights, African-American rights, etc. I'm a good person, I believe in those things. And my God, on the economic front, she will collapse and give the Republicans everything they want. I know again, it's not a smoke-filled room, guys. It's a groupthink. The groupthink that happens all the time. So when they see a weak Democrat like Pelosi or Schumer, they're like, yes! Their instincts kick in like, I've got to give that person a ton of money. And then they see killers on the other side and they're like, yes, I like this guy. Sometimes they're different donors, sometimes they're the same donor. But that is what in the long run leads to incredibly ineffectual Democrats who never ever learn their lesson. So here we go into impeachment with our hands tied behind our back. But overall, Trump is so bad and so stupid and his crimes so public and obvious that I think they're probably not gonna be able to help themselves and accidentally win.
Well, okay, so the one thing I will say is Republicans never give Democrats an inch, right? They never concede anything, they never make any type of public statement that would even come close to agreeing with Democrats. And it's because every time Democrats do that, you're right, Republicans will use their statements against them later, right? So in the Kevin McCarthy clip that we showed you earlier, he was referring to statements that Pelosi had made earlier in the year, in March, before this Ukraine issue even came up. So yeah, some compelling evidence regarding a completely different matter came up in which the president potentially broke the law by asking a foreign country to do an investigation into his political rival for his own political benefit, not for the benefit of the country. Now I want to go to Devin Nunes, who apparently doesn't have any idea about the glass house he lives in. Take a look.
After spending 3 years trying to manufacture a crime they can attribute to President Trump, they've come up empty. And now they've decided they don't like the way he talks to foreign leaders. But they have no evidence and no argument to support impeachment. All they have is the unconditional cooperation of the media. What we're seeing among Democrats on the Intelligence Committee down in the SCIF right now is like a cult. These are a group of people loyally following their leader as he bounces from one outlandish conspiracy theory to another. And the media are the cult followers, permanently stationed outside this committee spaces, pretending to take everything seriously because they too support the goal of removing the president.
Did he just refer to Democrats as a cult loyally following their leader?
From one outlandish conspiracy theory to another. No, George Orwell was the most brilliant man that ever lived. I mean, he nailed it. No one's ever been more right than George Orwell in 1984, the book 1984. He said they would turn the truth on its head. They would they would take things that are real and flip it 100% and then get you to try to believe it. And it works. It works for 30% of the country. They're like, oh yeah, Democrats believe in conspiracy theories. Man, I can't, that pizza parlor filled with child molesters like Tom Hanks. Okay, but the Democrats believe in conspiracy theories, and I love Donald Trump no matter what he does. Can you believe they follow their dear leader like that? Like they really believe it.
So USC had this panel on tribalism that I was part of. And one of the experts on that panel, who's actually studied tribalism and the psychology behind it, said something that I think is really important because you could see it being applied by Republicans all the time. If you repeat a lie enough, if you just constantly repeat the same lie over and over again, a certain percentage of people will just start to believe it. And so in one of the statements that Kevin McCarthy gave right after the vote, he said that there has been no compelling evidence from these hearings that have been taking place. Now, anyone paying attention knows that there has been compelling evidence. Again, there have been a number of Donald Trump's administration members coming out and saying, yes, there was quid pro quo. But even without that, yes, he was asking a foreign country to do an investigation into his political opponent for political gain. That by itself, without the quid pro quo, again, is a crime. It's against the law. And so we know what's really going on. But if the Republicans just repeat the same lie over and over again, a certain portion of Americans are just gonna believe it.
Yeah, now let's end on a fun note. Did you notice Jim Jordan in the background? He's not the only one that does it, but I've never believed in this old school thing of carrying a handkerchief around, blowing your nose into it, especially on national television, and then putting it back in your pocket.
I didn't notice that, and I wish you hadn't told me that.
But you know what Jim Jordan said? No, it was Nancy Pelosi who did that.
He looked at it too. Took a good look at that nasty napkin.
When he came up to speak, he's like, I cannot believe that Democrats carry around handkerchiefs, blow their nose into it on national TV, and then put it back in their pockets.
But first, they get a good look at that snot. All right, well, that's an interesting way to end this story, but that's where it's gonna end because we gotta take a break. When we come back, we have some more news, including additional testimony that took place today in the impeachment investigation. It just gets more detailed and more damning for Trump.
I gotta say one more thing. You do not wanna miss the Melania Trump, Donald Trump story later, okay? It's, oh my God, when I read it, I was like, no, really?
Come on, I thought, yeah, obviously.
Really? No, all right, anyway, that's later in the program.
I'm Hassan Piker. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Hassan D. Piker and on Twitter at Hassan the Hun. And this has been The Breakdown. Was that good, guys?
Okay, not enough hashtag use. Hashtag abs, hashtag model, hashtag woke bae.
Hashtag one black friend.
I'm thinking more rings.
I got him here.
You need more accessories, way more accessories.
I don't know where to put it.
Come on, throw these on. Woke bae, not sleep bae.
More sexy too.
When's the last time you posted on Instagram? Too long. Come on, man. No, you need to post at least once an hour. What's the outfit of the day today? Is this what you're going with?
This is what I'm gonna go with.
No. We need more accessories. We need.
This doesn't have anything to do. It doesn't.
For your gay audience, man.
Yeah,
Come
the
on.
gays love you, man.
Okay. What else? What else do I need to do?
You haven't appropriated a culture in a week.
We have like a kimono or something.
Damn, that
about the
looks good
video?
on you,
Is
dude.
this-
Perfect. How many rings you got on? Do we have any more?
I got 3 more.
Yeah, can we get more rings on this?
And when you're done, kiss the ring. Look at the camera. Kiss the ring. Maybe like a little wink.
Islam's role in terrorism and all the Huffington Post articles weren't doing well. I wasn't.
How many likes did our last outfit of the day picture have?
Only like 100,000.
So I think that's where your focus needs to be. I hear you on all the blah, blah, blah social issue. We need to focus on followers.
Kids in Yemen.
We don't care if you sleep at night.
Dab, dab.
Okay, I'll dab.
There you go.
More.
Talk about yourself more.
I'm Hassan Piker. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram.
Yeah, be more into it.
Instagram is important for me. Americans losing access to healthcare coverage.
I hear you. Attack Tommy more.
I've done it so many. She shoots out of her living room now. It's like punching down now.
We're okay with that. But it helps the brand.
We made you. We got you verified.
You're nothing
come
without
on.
us.
So I don't know what else I need to do here.
Dude, just take off that shirt.
That's exactly why Tommy Lauren is stupid. I hate you. I'm Hassan Piker. Follow me on Instagram.
Hashtag woke bae.
Hashtag woke bae. Please follow me.
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell a herbicide called Roundup, but you should know that that herbicide is a potential killer. Recent studies have linked Roundup to significant increases in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. That's a cancer that can be devastating to you and the people you love. While Roundup continues to cause cancer, Monsanto continues to make huge profits from the sale of Roundup. They will not take it off the market. If you or a loved one are exposed to Roundup at work or home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you may be entitled to financial compensation, and it's important for you to take action now and hold Monsanto accountable.
Cenk Uygur joins us.
We are progressive and unapologetically so. Very happy to say that millennial and Gen Z generations are massively progressive along with us.
Democrats, they've been so weak for so long. For God's sake, fight for your side.
I would not like to compromise with Republicans. I would like to defeat them. Lynn, do you support Donald Trump?
Yes, I like Donald Trump.
Well, that's why we think you're racist. The 5 black kids in Central Park did not commit the rape. He said, who cares? Keep them in prison anyway. They probably did something. He's a terrible guy. Very fine people on the side chanting, Jews will not replace us. He says we should ban all Muslims. Well, that's bigotry by definition. He said it during the campaign trail over and over again. Called Latinos criminals and rapists. See, you're used to Republicans being strong on television and Democrats cowering. New day in America. Progressives, we actually fight back. All right, back in the Young Turks. Let's go to members first. Theater Goddess says, to have a convincing mainstream media costume, you need a bad tie. I know, and in previous years, I have actually bothered to put on the tie. But this year, I was like, look, it's the 8th time I'm doing the gag. Let's just move on with our lives.
You should just ask John for one. I'm just kidding. John actually dresses really nice.
Johnny tie, shots fired.
But he's the only one who actually wears a tie at work.
Yeah, well, bless his heart. Anyway.
He's a classy guy.
Yeah, agree to disagree. Okay.
Wait, I'm sorry. I guess other people do. There was like a moaning sound coming from the control room.
All right, anyways, Roberto was singing along the same lines we were. Points for the kid that caught the candy that fell right into her bag. Agreed. Jess wrote in, for what Cenk has shared with us about his daughter, the little girl catching the candy and getting more from Melania seems like something Joy would do. Bingo. Total, exactly what I was thinking. I was like, when that little sneaky squirrel went back for the extra candy after she caught the first one, I was like, that's got Joy Uger written all over it.
No, but like I think what people don't understand is that little girl represents all females, right? Because we're always underestimated, but we're scheming.
I don't know that I would say that about all females.
We're scheming.
Okay. Anyway, thinking maybe, always thinking. Okay.
Sure. I mean, potato.
Well, that girl was the joy I needed this year but didn't know. I don't know. I ruined those memes. Anyway, let's move on. Jay Hufford with a great point that I had forgotten. Reminds me of the time Trump signed a kid's hat and then threw it into the crowd instead of giving it back. He did that, it's true, he did that. He's like, okay, yeah, no problem, son. He's like, what just happened? Okay.
Oh my God.
And then last one, Nomkin says, didn't Spider-Man, the one who didn't get any candy at all in that video, didn't Spider-Man there have brown skin? Oh, that's true, he did. So there we are. Anyway, last one.
Can you end on a good note?
Yeah, I know, that one was a little. Okay, I Am Sock says, you've been hit by, you've been struck by the dumbest criminal.
Yes, that was good, that was good. I liked it.
We got it, all right.
Okay, well we have some more updates on impeachment, so let's get to that. Another Trump official has testified before impeachment investigators. This time it's an individual who advised Trump specifically on policy pertaining to the European Union and Russia. Now his name is Tim Morrison and he actually recently stepped down from his position. Morrison, the top Russia and Europe advisor of President Trump's National Security Council, offered House impeachment investigators the most detailed account to date for how Trump tried to use his office to pressure Ukraine to investigate former Vice President Joe Biden. Now, one of the important parts of his testimony was he corroborated the testimony of previous officials who spoke before impeachment investigators. He said that he alerted Taylor, meaning Bill Taylor, to a push by Trump and his deputies to withhold both security aid and a White House visit for the Ukrainian president until Ukraine agreed to investigate the Bidens and interference in the 2016 presidential election. So there it is again, the quid pro quo. It keeps coming up again. You keep seeing more and more Trump officials corroborating and confirming that quid pro quo did in fact take place. Morrison corroborated that he spoke with Taylor at least twice in early September. The first conversation was to alert him that Gordon Sondland, the US ambassador to the European Union, had told the Ukrainians that no US aid would be forthcoming until they announced an investigation into Burisma, a Ukrainian energy company that had hired Biden's son Hunter. So I know this all keeps sounding, like we're repeating ourselves. There's a lot of repetition in this impeachment investigation. And that's actually a good thing because again, you have one official after the next, people who currently work in Trump's administration coming out and talking about the clear quid pro quo that they saw while Trump was trying to carry out this nonsense.
Yes, and it's about 28 in a row that have now said, yeah, all the same thing, yep. He did it in the call, they did it in the meetings, they clearly pressured it. It was about Burisma, it was about Biden. Now, if Trump heard that, he'd be like, outrageous, this Cenk Uygur guy saying 28. It wasn't 28, only about 4 people have confirmed that I committed a crime.
It's pretty serious.
Only 4, okay? In fact, almost everyone that heard it thought it was a crime, but it wasn't 28. Okay, yes, that's true. So look, he's in a world of hurt. Everybody who coming in to testify is saying the same exact thing because that's what happened. And then now there's a Republican talking point and they're all desperate. These are, normally the Republicans have a talking point good enough to trick people, right? Like, so they'll take the estate tax and they'll go, oh, it's a death tax. I can't believe they're taxing people as they're dying. Right, and so now that's.
I mean, you could tax me as much as you want after I die.
I know, right?
Yeah.
They're like, they're taxing him twice. No, they're actually not taxing Conrad Hilton. They're taxing Paris Hilton, who's getting the money for the first time. Anyway, but at least there's some sort of thing you could hang your hat on. These are terrible talking points. They're like, oh, well, it was just one call. No, it was a number of meetings they're all testifying about. So the ambassadors met with the Ukrainian officials, Pence met with the Ukrainian officials, and in almost all the meetings, they all said the same thing. You gotta give us Biden, otherwise we're not gonna give you the money. Even Judge Napolitano went on Fox News today and he's like, it wasn't just the call. I don't know what the hell they're talking about. It was a series of meetings and then the call, and all saying the same exact thing, help me in my political campaign, otherwise I'm not gonna give you the money that US Congress has said you should have for our national security purposes.
Exactly, so I'm gonna read you two other relevant portions of this story, and then I want you to pay close attention to how much they contradict themselves. Because these are statements by Morrison, both are statements by Morrison, but it's just, I don't follow his logic here. So Morrison told lawmakers that he spoke with Taylor, again, this is Bill Taylor, again on September 7th to share a quote, sinking feeling about a worrisome conversation between Trump and Gordon Sondland, the person said. Morrison said that during that conversation, Trump said he wasn't seeking a quid pro quo, but went on to insist that Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky had to publicly announce that he was opening investigations of Biden and 2016 election interference. So apparently during this conversation, Trump was said to have said that there was no quid pro quo taking place, even though the actions were clear quid pro quo. So we'll come back to that in just a second, but here's the part that I don't get. Obviously, Tim Morrison sees the quid pro quo. Obviously, this is a problem. It is against the law, right? But according to the Washington Post, Morrison said he did not necessarily view the president's demands as improper or illegal, but rather problematic for US policy in supporting an ally in the region. No, but it's against the law.
Yeah, no, so that's very important there. Morrison's recounting of the facts of the case are very important because he was there. So he confirms what happened. It's the same thing that everybody says. They asked for an investigation of Trump's political opponent, otherwise they won't give him the money. Then he adds something that is totally irrelevant. He says, my legal opinion when no one asked for it is, yeah, it looks like a crime, but I don't want to call it a crime. Okay, duly noted, but that doesn't mean anything. We just need to know what actually happened. You told us what happened. Everyone else can tell that that's a crime because it's in the legal books as a crime.
So I have a question. It's more of a statement actually now that I think about it. How is it possible, it's a rhetorical question. How is it possible for anyone to serve in the executive branch, have these incredibly important positions in government and not know what is and is not illegal?
No, I'm not that surprised by it. Remember, he's already fired anyone that was within a mile of competence. So
that's a good point.
Right, so he's getting down to people who, like some of these folks, to be fair to them, are decorated veterans that have been working in national security for a while because that's their career path. Some of them are ambassadors and they've been diplomats for a long time. But a lot of them, especially at the higher levels, are like his uncle and his cousin and the niece and the dog, because he's just desperately trying to find loyal people. So, and remember, some of the appointments that he made were so comical, they never even went up for a vote. They're like, dude, that's your gardener. And he has like a criminal history.
I pick the best people. Okay, no more of these never Trumpers. And by the way, what I love is that he keeps referring to people who testify against him as never Trumpers. They're people who like serve in his administration.
Who actively said, yes, I will serve under Trump. That's a curious person to be a never Trumper. Anyway, last thing on that is that as these guys make the, damn it, I forgot what I was gonna say.
Best people. You have the best memory, you'll remember.
I invented memory. All right, I'll do it another story. You get the point, they're full of crap.
Yeah. All right, well, we got to move on, and this is a fun story. I like the mix of fun and serious today. And this is a story that's grabbing a lot of attention because of how insane it is. So, Donald Trump Jr. just broke the record for the most ironic statement of all time, and he did it while speaking to Sean Hannity. Let's take a look.
Imagine if that was, your name was Hunter Biden. Except Hunter's
I wish my name was Hunter Biden. I could go abroad, make millions off of my father's presidency. I'd be a really rich guy. It would be incredible. But because my name is Trump, if I took $1.5 from China. Not 1.5 billion like Hunter, but $1.5, their heads would explode. If I took a no-show job for $83,000 a month for a business I knew nothing about, in a language I didn't speak, in a corrupt country like the Ukraine, where my dad says we're going to withhold billions of taxpayer dollars if you don't get rid of the prosecutor investigating me, the media would end themselves, Sean. They'd have an aneurysm. We'd end the fake news media problem. That's the double standard that we're living under right now.
It is very, unfair to the Trump children for not, enjoying the wealth and the fame that Hunter Biden did under his vice president father. Now Donald Trump Jr.'s roughly 150 to 200 million net worth is from his own father's company. There's that. Then you have Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump literally serving in the White House as senior advisors, even though they have absolutely no experience in government or in knowledge or logic. But nonetheless, they're there. But there's a lot more I can get to in just a second.
Oh, yeah. I can't, he's taking advantage of his name. That's why I work at Trump Organization. Hey, Don, what's your name? Donald Trump Jr. Where did you get all of your money? From working for my dad? So now Anna's gonna give you details on how he actually literally went abroad to get money, just like he's claiming from Hunter Biden. But I also have to point out that two fun things in that clip. One is, if I took $1.5, who says $1.5? What is that? It's not a thing, right? And then, did you notice they were playing him out? They started like,
oh yeah. They're like, get off it, get off it, get off it.
They're like,
this is too dumb even for us. Get off it, get off it, get off it.
Some producer at Fox News, he's like, can you imagine if I took advantage of my name like it was like my dad's name? His name is literally his dad's name, right? Yeah. Like, play him out, play him out.
He's on.
Cue the orchestra.
Why does he think he's on television? Like, does he think he's on television because of like the riveting conversations that he engages in? Is he on television because he's good looking? Is he on television because he's entertaining? Well, sometimes. I mean, it's sometimes very fun to watch a train wreck. But nonetheless, like, does he think for a second anyone would give him a moment of airtime if he were Joe Schmo? No, he's Donald Trump Jr. That's literally his name, and he has profited off of that quite a bit. Trump Jr. and his younger brother Eric Trump both run the Trump Organization. They hold the titles Executive Vice President of Development and Acquisitions, and frequently travel abroad to set up branding deals so hotel, resort, and condominium buildings can use the Trump name for marketing purposes. So they literally profit off the Trump name. That's the whole point of the business. Also, additionally, the Trump Organization builds its own properties overseas. Oh, that's interesting, including a $1 billion deal in 2018 for an expansion of Trump luxury apartment complexes in India. So like the Trump family is raking it in while Trump is president, and they don't care. They live in that glass house and they're like, stones everywhere. We're gonna throw them. We're gonna throw those damn stones. It's incredible to me.
Okay, I'd like to note for the record that nobody throws a stone like this.
I don't know. I don't go around throwing stones. I know about my glass house.
Okay, I'd also like to note that $1 billion that they made in India, or the deal that was worth $1 billion, is slightly more than $1.5. And guys, if you're wondering why we keep emphasizing they're making money off the name of Trump, is because Trump is maniacally bad at business. So no one ever loans him money to actually build anything anymore. He's gone bankrupt 6 times. And so, but what they do is they think it's good for marketing. So they pay him for the name Trump on a building that they build, right? And that they manage and maintain. So there's literally never been anything more ironic than Donald Trump Jr. saying, can you imagine profiting off your name or off your dad's name? It's exactly what he does for a living, exactly.
But we're not even done yet. I mean, as you guys all know, JR puts together the best compilation videos. The best, and we have an example of that right now.
The Chinese government has given a preliminary green light to Ivanka Trump's company for 5 more trademarks.
Online records show the Chinese government awarded Ivanka Trump's brand 7 new trademarks.
Ivanka Trump struggles selling her wares in the U.S. Overseas, China has approved 13 trademarks for the first daughter.
The news comes just days after President Trump told Congress the administration had reached a deal with China to revive telecom giant ZTE. Critics say the timing of the move and the trademarks raise questions about potential ethical violations.
7 days prior to President Trump coming out and saying that he was going to allow telecommunications company ZTE do business in the U.S., the Chinese government awarded Ivanka Trump 7 new trademarks to cash in on her name, Ivanka Trump.
Meanwhile, Trump is locked in negotiations with China over saving cell phone maker ZTE from financial ruin.
The applications for all of them were filed in 2016 and 2017.
Foreign governments believe that if you do favors for the president's children that serve the president's business interests outside of the government, that it'll serve their foreign interests. And this is a pattern that we've seen time and time again.
So Donald Trump over and over again has used the office of the president to enrich himself, to enrich his family, to make foreign policy decisions based on their own self-interest. And that alone would have been enough for an impeachment investigation, but they never touch him. And I'm talking about Democrats. They never touch him when it comes to those types of financial crimes. You know, it is interesting that the thing that really did persuade Pelosi to act was when Trump went after his political rival, an establishment Democrat, Joe Biden.
100%.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and Donald Trump assumes corruption in regards to Biden and his son because he's doing projection. He's like, well, I would and do corruption on behalf of my kids all the time, so I assume Biden did it as well, and that's partly what led to this. But let's end on further fun, because of course Twitter went nuts over Don Jr. saying that stuff, and he said that oh man, I'd like to be Hunter Biden. So a lot of people filled in the blank of why. One person said, because your dad actually would care about you then, right? And then another one said, because then you'd have a chin.
I know, I saw that. I was gonna share that with the audience, but I was like, I don't know, is that too lowbrow?
Oh, when they go low, we kneecap them.
But you know, the one thing I will say about his appearance is if you pay close attention to the way he speaks, like the movements of his mouth, for lack of a better way of phrasing it, he does speak just like Donald Trump.
Really?
He's got like the underbite going on. He does move his lips way more than they need to be moved while speaking.
I think he looks nothing like Donald Trump.
You see too much tongue while he speaks.
Yeah. So I thought it was a bit on the nose for his wife to name him after him when he looks nothing like him, which made me pause. But he is just as dumb as his dad. So that proves the apple has not fallen far from the tree.
Yep. Genetics, it's powerful. All right, so we're gonna take a break. When we come back, we'll switch gears and talk a little bit about how Twitter is taking a different approach compared to Facebook when it comes to political ads. And then later on, we will share our disdain for Joe Manchin.
We're gonna do a little thing we like to call Weekly World News. Weekly World News. I cull stories from around the globe, stories that aren't covered on the main show or aren't covered enough, and I turn it into a 5-question quiz for Dave and Steve. All right, do we have our answers? A from Dave and C from Steve, and the correct answer is B, an oil tanker that sank off the coast of China. Okay, we have one answer of B and one answer of C. What is the correct answer? It is, of course, A, an airplane wing walking stunt gone wrong. Okay, we have an answer of A from Dave and C from Steve. The correct answer is B. We have an answer of B and C. What is the correct answer in true Weekly World News tradition? It's A.
Come on.
Taking the bear out for ice cream.
That can't possibly be true. We're terrible today. Just terrible.
I often think about the terror that my grandmother was under until she was 8 or 9 years old, and how horrific that experience must have been in this state of discomfort for the benefit of other people.
People will still treat you like you're the problem. That's what we mean when we say living well black. We're just trying to live our best life and trying to be the best that we can be. And we're frustrated and tired of people treating us like we're criminals.
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell an herbicide called Roundup. You should know that recent studies have linked this commercial herbicide to a significant increase in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. A diagnosis of this type of cancer can be devastating to you and your family, while Monsanto continues to profit from these sales. If you or a loved one were exposed to Roundup at work or at home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you might be entitled to financial compensation, and you have a right to take action now.
You're about to watch some behind the scenes footage of the Young Turks. Now these are partial videos. If you want to get all of them, you become a member, go to tyt.com/join, and you'll get all the behind the scenes of me, Anna, John, JR, a little bit reality show like. tyt.com/join and enjoy this.
You know what you're seeing behind me? Jersey, hold. Watch me flip this camera. However I flip it. Do I flip it like this? No, I just took a picture. I'm bitzing right now.
What?
Behind the scenes.
Oh, okay. For members? I don't have my face on.
She doesn't have her face on, folks. Oh, that's JR's ass right there.
You can't take 5 minutes off, can you?
No, I can't, Johnny Pie. I said it was live stream, but I was lying. It's not a live stream. It's just for members. Bitsy, this is my cat. You know what his name is? Kiki Cat.
Animals are innocent.
Control room and the insanity is obviously there.
Right now, as you can see, I'm directing or tech directing.
I'm so happy to be here.
This is what like a Labor Day beard looks like for Cenk. Man, you're a Young Turks viewer if you recognize me like this.
Oh, thank you. You are the one person in my life I would love to meet.
What's going on, guys? This is a Bitsy or a BTS or behind the scenes with Hassan Piker, aka Woke Bay.
Oh, hi, I didn't see you there.
I have finished my show, The Damage Report, and now I get into a really awkward time of the day.
When I'm sitting, the control room is right there. So I can see Bart.
This is the Pittsburgh office, by the way. I'll refer to often as the boiler room.
You see how it's ripped? Is it super unprofessional to wear that at a business meeting? Or am I like cool, rebel?
I just finished doing the power panel and I'm fired up.
What do you do for TYT? Not a whole lot.
If you're frantically tweeting at us that something's broken, thank you, because I'm fixing it.
And thank you for being a TYT member.
Super last thing, because there's always got to be a super last thing. Oh, that was disastrous. This has been behind the scenes, behind the scenes.
Hey guys, welcome back to TYT. Bringing it in, bringing it in. And I have some announcements for you before Cenk does some live reads, not live reads, TYT lives. So Friday power panels are a little different these days. If you are not a member, you can watch on various platforms, including Pluto TV, Zumo, the Roku channel, and YouTube TV. For our members, if you watch live, you can also watch on those various platforms. You can also check out the show later in the members the members archives. And if you want to become a member, just go to tyt.com/join. But for TYT members, you can also watch at tyt.com/live. For everyone else, again, there's Pluto TV, Zumo, the Roku channel, and YouTube TV. Shop TYT is having a sale, which is awesome because it's Halloween. So if you go to shoptyt.com today, you get 15% off long sleeves and hoodies for a limited time. All you need to do is use the promo code SPOOKY15 at checkout. And then Happy Half Hour is going to air a new episode tomorrow. Our very own JR Jackson is gonna be on Brett's show, Happy Half Hour. And you can check it out tomorrow at 7 p.m. Pacific time. Don't miss it. For our members, of course, you can check it out whenever you want. And then finally, the TYT Revolution Rally is coming to Atlanta, Georgia. So the debates are gonna happen in Atlanta, Georgia as well. But on November 20th, the TYT rally will take place. Just go to tyt.com/rally for more information.
And Mayor Ted Terry is going to join us, and he's running for Georgia's Senate seat, and he's a really strong progressive. So check that out as well. All right, so I'll go in reverse order here. Joy on Twitter, Joya Janaluski writes in, Cenk, is there a way to sign up for a TYT family plan where I can pay a little extra to have people use my login to watch all the content? If not, will it be something that can be done in the future? That does not exist yet, but I love that you're suggesting it. I'll talk to the product guys about it and see what we can do. So meanwhile, obviously, tyt.com/join for any new account. Tim Joyce says, did anyone else notice that Don Jr. just admitted he's not a really rich guy? 6 bankruptcies might not leave much. That's right. I mean, what happened? I thought you guys had $10 billion. Now you're like, oh, I wish I was Hunter Biden making $83,000 a year. What?
Yeah, I'd be curious to see what their worth is after Trump's gone, because they've been raking it in while Trump's president.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see all their finances. Anyway, Seth says, Trump Jr. is part of the derp state. Come on, that's funny, Seth. Nice job, Seth.
How did we not think of that before?
I know, maybe we should make some shirts. All right, speaking of shirts, get Seth a shirt. I forget how to do it, I hesitate every time. But good tweets, good comments, every once in a while I'll get you the most random shirt. Go on shoptyt.com, Seth, and find the one you like and somehow we'll get it to you. Anyways, all right, let's keep going. Okay, Congressional Baseball Fan says the Trump administration has been a wild ride, folks. We've gone from very cool, very legal to very quid pro, very quo pro. Okay, and that's the reason I read that to you because it reminded me what I was going to say. Trump thinks if you don't actually use the words quid pro quo, it's not a crime.
Right.
Like, he's so unbelievable. Like, okay, now I don't want you to do an armed robbery. I want you to go into a bank with a gun, put it to their head, take all the money out that isn't yours and walk out. But it is not an armed robbery. Perfect call. Okay, he really, God, okay. And along those lines, Katie Nicole 87 says, sometimes you think Trump is the dumbest person on earth and then Junior comes and says, hold my beer.
Yeah, totally, totally.
Casparian Friendly Ghost says, oh my God, and I slayed the impression. So that's nice for you. And then the last one, Viscous Cree says, how are Donald Trump Jr. and Meghan McCain not married to each other?
Ugh.
Nobody complains about the privilege they themselves enjoy more than the conservative trust fund snobs.
It's so true, it's so true.
Great point, Viscous.
Yeah.
All right, we got more stories, let's do it.
Switching gears, let's talk a little bit about social media and political advertising. So, Twitter is banning all political advertising in a move that really does differ from Facebook's approach on the very same topic. In fact, this was an announcement that Jack Dorsey, Twitter CEO, made just yesterday via Twitter. We've made the decision to stop all political advertising on Twitter globally. A political message earns reach when people decide to follow an account or retweet. Paying for reach removes that decision, forcing highly optimized and targeted political messages on people. We believe this decision should not be compromised by money. Now, what I particularly enjoyed about Dorsey's statement was the not so subtle jab toward Facebook's decision to allow for disinformation in political ads. They will not be censoring or taking down political ads that straight up lie about opponents. So here's what Dorsey says about that. It's not credible for us to say, we're working hard to stop people from gaming our systems to spread misleading info, but if someone pays us to target and force people to see their political ad, well, they can say whatever they want.
So I want to make a couple of distinctions here, and I'm going to respectfully dissent from, well, what a lot of progressives are thinking, honestly. So first of all, I think Twitter should do political ads. So that is different than allowing lies in political ads. Two different things, okay? So why should Twitter allow political ads? Because a lot of the upstart candidates, including a lot of progressive candidates, they don't have money for TV ads, and nor are TV ads that effective. That is the tool that the corporate Democrats use because they have a ton of money from their corporate friends and their big donors. So the clean candidates have less money and they need social media to run those ads.
No.
So I think Facebook and Twitter should have political ads, but I get obviously that you could do some degree of fact checking on those.
No, so okay, let me make a distinction because I was curious about how this was gonna work. So this is all about ad buys, right? So on Twitter, you can do ad buys like do ad buys on Facebook. Now in this case, if you have put together a political ad and you just share it on the platform, you don't do an ad buy, you're still able to do that. There's nothing stopping you from doing that.
I know, but advertising is how you get it to more people.
Sure,
and
that's true.
It's much more cost effective online than it is on television or radio or traditional media. I mean, if you do it in a newspaper, you might as well burn your money. So I don't like this unilateral disarmament that's happening in that sense. And so,
I get it, but
a lot of the establishment is putting the pressure on here. I think, look, there's progressive voices that are chiming in like AOC as well. I just don't happen to agree. And so there's a tiny amount of political ads on Twitter. It's only $1 million. And I'm actually shocked that that's all there is. I mean, there should be a lot more political ads if you ask me on Twitter, but there apparently wasn't, so they're not giving up that much money.
Right, they're not giving up that much money, and I'm glad you brought that up because Facebook stands to lose a lot more money if they were to ban political ads. So I really don't question that the financial component of this is what pushes for the decisions that these two CEOs have made. But nonetheless, look, I hear you. I would much rather have political ads on these platforms if they were done correctly, if they were monitored correctly. But here's the thing, I just don't trust them to do the job correctly. I just don't. I mean, they have failed over and over again when it comes to fake news, the spread of disinformation, various bad actors exploiting these digital platforms, I should say, digital platforms for their own nefarious reasons. They've done a terrible job in policing that. And I don't think that they're gonna do a great job in monitoring political ads, which is why I think Facebook is like, whatever, we're just not gonna deal with it at all.
But even if you ban the political ads, it's not gonna get rid of the disinformation. They're gonna, and it's not just Russians, it's much more so domestic forces that do these disinformation tactics on Facebook and social media. By the way, it's not just Republicans either. Democratic super PACs do it in primaries against progressives. So I get it, I understand all those things, but I would ask them to spend a lot more time and energy instead of just banning things wholesale to try to figure out the disinformation campaigns. So in the political ads, I'm also going to be, more understanding than the average bear, I guess, on that too, because, so for example, everybody's using the example of Trump's ads saying that Biden's held $1 billion in aid in order to make sure that Hunter Biden's company was not investigated in Ukraine.
It's just a flat out lie.
It is. On the other hand, Hunter Biden did make a lot of money from that company, and Joe Biden did control $1 billion in funding. He did not hold it up. That is absolutely critical.
It's a lie, Cenk.
Yeah,
it's a lie.
So but it does get tough as to where you tell the other folks to draw the line. Can they mention the $1 billion? Can they mention the $50,000 that Hunter Biden got per month, etc.? So this is not an easy task for social media.
It's not an easy task. So we have two pretty terrible options. It's either the Facebook model, which I think is terrible, and it spreads disinformation and it smears people unfairly, right? And also keep in mind, look, we're dealing with two completely different political parties, and I'm not just talking about policies or ideology, I'm just talking about character, right? So on the right, you have people who will stop at nothing to smear the other side, to lie about the other side, to put out pure propaganda, false information about that opponent, just so they can get the upper hand and they can win. Whereas Democrats, they're known for playing patty cakes, as Cenk would say. So they don't play as dirty. Sure, are there some establishment Democrats that are vicious toward progressives? Yes, but in the grand scheme of things, if you compare the two parties, Republicans take advantage of disinformation campaigns way more than Democrats do, and they're far more effective at it. So I hate the Facebook model. I don't love the Twitter model of banning it outright, but if I had to choose between the two, I would go with the Twitter model, because otherwise, look, Democrats don't stand a chance. Look, and it's not just about character, it's also about the money, right? We know Republicans have money that Democrats don't. And if you're really concerned about progressive candidates, they have even less money. So how are they gonna fight the kind of smears that you see from Republicans?
Yeah, so look, let me do the standard conflict of interest thing that I do every time in a service of transparency. Facebook and YouTube are our partners, so you should know that. But I don't want to go back to the bad old days of gatekeepers. So the gatekeepers, the CNNs, the New York Times, etc., those are not good days for the American people. We had 40 years of stagnant wages as politicians robbed us blind, and all the mainstream media called them beloved and honorable ladies and gentlemen who are worthy of our respect and not to be ever challenged. I don't want to go back to those days. So social media gives upstarts, progressives, honestly, revolutions a much better chance, political revolutions, right? And so there's an effort by the Hillary Clintons of the world to go, oh, I hate that. I just want to be lazy and control the MSNBC. It's so easy to control. I just yell at them every once in a while, right? And I want to go back to the good old days where I raise a ton of money for my corporate friends and then I buy all the ads on television in the New York Times and I yell at people and I get my way. And these rascally progressives and conservatives too, they annoy me, right? So there's a lot of attempt here by the establishment to regain control. But it is a balancing act because there is terrible disinformation. I'm not in any camp, right? So there's a camp that says disinformation is so bad you should shut everything down, and there's a camp that says no, let it be wild, wild west, right? No, we've got to find a balancing act here, and I know that the balancing act is hard, but they do have a lot of money, so they could use some of that in an effort to try to get that balancing act done correctly.
Well, this is why I think it is important to break up these big tech companies, right? Because it's hard to regulate them if you don't know what category they fall under. And the fact of the matter is, these companies are a combination of various businesses under one umbrella, right? So is it a media company? Is it an advertising company? Like, what is it exactly? And it's hard for the government to properly regulate it unless you know what it is. So if you want political ads with absolutely no regulation, of course you're gonna have issues, and that's what we're running into right now.
Yeah, I don't want to get into another long debate about that, but I'm not sure I believe that either. I mean, obviously, again, conflict of interest here. The Young Turks is so large, they'd probably want to break us up because we dominate the internet so much.
Yeah, real large, Cenk. We're really doing well. Anyway, we got to take a break. When we come back, Joe Manchin and his thoughts on Bernie Sanders.
Welcome to the Damage Report. I'm John Idarola. This is gonna be a big one.
The earth is burning.
Yeah.
Not only that, but that should shake you enough, period. But that so many people in power don't seem to care.
We're making America great again by throwing more money at the military to destroy other countries because that makes us great instead of investing it in ourselves.
That it's Donald Trump and it's Stephen Miller. The choosing is based on wanting to create cruel and inhumane conditions to scare other people away from ever coming to the United States.
We have to also remember that we like to put people in prison in this country.
There is only one place to put garbage people: in the trash.
We've never had so much access to so much information with so little idea of what the hell is going on.
What does enforcing our borders have to do with traumatizing children? Absolutely nothing.
I think a sane person could say the current situation we have right now is radical. But what we're doing is literally making the world more like hell. That's a warning sign.
All right, we got a graphic incoming. Putting it up, 3, 2, 1. All right, video next. And next video. And power panel. And dropping it.
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell an herbicide called Roundup. You should know that recent studies have linked this commercial herbicide to a significant increase in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. A diagnosis of this type of cancer can be devastating to you and your family, while Monsanto continues to profit from these sales. If you or a loved one were exposed to Roundup at work or at home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you might be entitled to financial compensation, and you have a right to take action now.
I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm at a Wolfpack gathering.
We're growing. I see faces that I recognize, but I also see a lot of faces that I don't recognize, and that's fantastic.
We are all taking time out of our lives to be here, and that's amazing. That means we truly believe in this. Make no mistake, everyone in this room is a leader in Wolfpack.
Alaska, West Virginia, Montana, Georgia, Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, everyone is here. All these folks paid with their own money and sometimes took vacation days to come here to strategize on how to get our democracy back and get money out of politics.
Or you get more political power just because you have more money. This is why it requires a constitutional amendment.
The process of winning in your state next year doesn't begin when session begins. It begins right now.
To work to a goal, something this big that you're actually making a difference of, there's very few things in the world that really compare to that feeling.
Equal rights to fair representation, rights for human beings, anti-corruption laws, and free and fair elections. That's what we are fighting for.
What were the founding fathers? Revolutionaries. And they built revolution into the document.
So Article 5 is the way we have to go.
This is how you do it.
You're in this as a team, you're in this together. The fight will always continue.
That fight is not between the left and the right. That fight is between basically greed and humanity.
So I'm asking you to put differences aside, whether you're conservative or independent or progressive, to join forces to say no more corruption.
You get beyond the fear, you take that first step, and you'll change the world.
What I want to leave you with, of course, is hope. And I want to assure you that if we keep fighting together, we're going to win together. We're going to get that convention, we're going to get that amendment, and we're going to get our democracy back. Come join us, wolf-pack.com.
All right, back on TYT. Reign of Bastet writes in, Cenk, you're an attorney. Isn't that defamation or libel to have these ads blatantly lie? No, it isn't. And no, I'm not really an attorney. No, technically a lawyer, but no, politicians have different rules than regular folks do. And second of all, you can actually, the Supreme Court has decided you can lie in political ads.
Yeah, they have.
Legally, you're allowed to, but the outlets still get to make a decision on whether they want to air them. Okay.
I gotta read that ruling because I want to know the reasoning behind that. That's crazy. And one other thing people don't know is if you're an elected official or any type of public official and you're making statements in your official capacity, even if you lie, you are legally protected from any type of defamation suit. Did you know that? You could just go up there.
I'm an attorney.
Do a press conference and lie about anything.
Jim with a C writes in, geez, Cenk, you really got Trump's hand gestures down to a two. I have the best hand gestures, the best, thank you. Okay, Mike says, apparently agreeing with me, this exists to squash dissent. This will completely disrupt the ability for primary challengers to build their audience unless they're already an established online presence like a celebrity, especially since Twitter doesn't let primary challengers get verified. So that's a really interesting point about the verification too. Noam Chomsky writes in.
What, he's watching?
No, Gnome.
Oh.
Noam. Sometimes it's exhausting to watch TYT. They're too good at making you think critically. Why, thank you, Noam, we appreciate that. Grolix Guy on Twitter, and use hashtag TYT Live to talk to us on Twitter when we're live, says, I love it when Cenk and Anna disagree. It makes me feel even more like we're getting fair reporting. Plus, they show us they can get along and still respectfully disagree.
Yeah, in fact, when we went to break, I said, I feel like I didn't express how much I disagree with you enough in that last segment.
Yeah, I was like, I think you got it across, but anyway, of course I'm gonna read this last one. Kumquat of Random Land writes in, regarding the ads on Twitter, I started off agreeing with Anna, but Cenk made such excellent points, I changed my position.
Wrong, okay, banned.
Mic drop, double mic drop.
Fake news.
Kumquat, you're my kind of guy.
No, but here's the thing. The last, not that tweet, but the tweet before that, or maybe it was the tweet, but the thing about censoring dissent and how primary challengers, get squashed and all that. Like you're persuading me, like you're more persuasive than the stuff that Cenk brought up. So I'll rethink it, I really will.
It's the same point I made, but I'm not gonna give Cenk credit, okay? You make the best points, him, wrong. Okay, anyway, let's go.
All right. Joe Manchin is a Democrat in name, but over and over again, he shows us that he is as conservative as can be. He has sided with Republicans over and over again. And in a recent interview with Neil Cavuto on Fox News, he shared his genuine thoughts on Bernie Sanders.
The Bernie Sanders thing. Would you support his agenda?
Absolutely not. And Bernie and I have had many conversations. I think that Bernie brings a lot to the table, makes you think a little bit, kind of gets the blood going and stirring and everything, but it's not practical where I come from. Bernie keeps saying Medicare for all. I said, Bernie, we can't even pay for Medicare for some. I says, right now the trust fund's going to go broke by 2026, and these are people that paid into it and earned it. Now you want to expand it, what happens? So it doesn't make sense at all.
What if he were your nominee for president and it's him versus Donald Trump? Who do you vote for?
Well, it wouldn't be Bernie.
All right, so it would be the president, unless you leave it blank.
Wouldn't be Bernie.
Would it be Donald Trump?
Let's just say I'm going to make decisions based on what's best for my country and my state.
So, a Medicare for all, I mean, we can't even pay for Medicare for some. No one reads the bill. 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 It makes me crazy, right? Yeah. So it's not, oh, we're gonna take the system as it is today and just expand it without changing anything else. It is titled Medicare for all. It is not the same program. It expands Medicare for all. It fully funds Medicare for all by raising taxes on people that I'm sure, pad your pockets in campaign donations. So that's why you say you're against it. But like, why is he even a Democrat? Why does he say he's a Democrat? Why is that his label? And more importantly, why do establishment Democrats go after Bernie Sanders for being an independent in Vermont? But they don't go after disgusting people like Joe Manchin who pretend to be a Democrat, but side with Republicans again and again and again.
Yeah, so look, this is a great example of putting a lie to the idea of unity. So unity doesn't mean that we all agree. It means that progressives should do obedience to the establishment.
Nope.
Because by the way, there's another independent, Angus King from Maine. He's another senator. He caucuses with the Democrats, but he's an independent and he's much more conservative. He's more conservative than the average Democrat. And when there was an actual Democrat running against him in the last Senate race, the Democratic Party supported Angus King rather than the actual Democrat. Now, why did they do that? If we were for unity and you cared so much about the D on the helmet and you had your pom-poms on and you're a Democrat no matter what, you would have supported the Democrat in the race. They're like, no, why? Because they like that Angus King is more conservative. They like that he takes more money from the same donors they take money from. So Joe Manchin, I don't know if he read the bill or not, it doesn't matter. If he did read the bill, he would be more against it. He's like, well, this would hurt my donors a lot and it would just help the American people, and I'm definitely not in favor of that. No way it's gonna be Bernie, because Joe Manchin will not vote with the voters under penalty of law.
And notice his framing. The way that he frames his objection to Medicare for all makes it appear as though the voters in his state are against Medicare for all, or they wouldn't be in favor of it, they don't think it's practical. Oh, really? So you're telling me the good people of West Virginia would not want to be fully covered healthcare wise? That would include dental, it would include optical, it would include everything they could possibly need. You're telling me that your voters would be against that. No, it's a lie, it's a lie. When he's saying that, you're right, Cenk, he's specifically referring to the donors, not the actual voters.
Sure, I can prove more of that, right? So first of all, West Virginia is one of the poorest states. Under Medicare for all, the rates that people pay overall when you combine healthcare and taxes, the top 5% pay more, everybody else pays less. So if you come from a state like Connecticut, that might not be great because there's a lot of people in the top 5% in Connecticut, okay? But in West Virginia, that would be fantastic for your voters. They would almost all pay less, except for critical donors to Joe Manchin. And then I'll go further. He says, well, look, I'm a Democrat, but I just can't stomach Bernie Sanders, so my state doesn't want that. Now, you wanna know who won in the Democratic primaries in 2016? In West Virginia, Bernie Sanders won overwhelmingly.
Yep.
Because West Virginians aren't more conservative, and they're certainly not more corporate, they're more populist. The reason they went overwhelmingly for Trump is because they perceived him to be the more populist candidate between him and Hillary Clinton. But when they had a choice between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, they went overwhelmingly for Bernie Sanders. So Joe Manchin says, I will vote for more corporate Democrats like Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden, who my state hates. But I will not vote for Bernie Sanders, even though especially the Democrats in my state and I'm a Democrat in my state, the Democrats in my state greatly prefer Bernie Sanders. But no, my donors don't. But he's never challenged on that because there's a blockade on cable about talking about donors and talking about their corruption.
You're right,
so
yeah.
that they never mention the real reason he's against Bernie Sanders.
Now, since we were discussing unity, I do think it's important to juxtapose the way that Manchin talked about Bernie in an interview that Bernie had in regard to Joe Manchin. So earlier, CNBC interviewed Bernie Sanders and asked, well, how are you gonna accomplish things with people like Joe Manchin? And here's what Bernie had to say.
Even if you have a successful election and you get elected, even if it's successful to the point that Democrats win a small majority in the Senate, is Joe Manchin going to vote for your program? Yeah. Is John Tester going to vote
Damn
for your
right
program?
they will. You know why? And they're friends of mine.
Yeah.
Because we're going to go to West Virginia, which is maybe the poorest state, well, one of the poorest states in this country. Look, what happens right now, your average politician sits around and he or she thinks, they say, let's see, if I do this, I'm going to have the big money interest putting 30-second ads against me. So I better not do it. But now they're going to have to think, if I don't support an agenda that works for working people, I'm going to have President Sanders come into my state and rally working class people. You know what? At the end of the day, the 1% is very powerful. No denying that. But the 99%, when they're organized and prepared to stand up and fight, they are far more powerful.
So, Anna, sorry, there was another interview that Bernie Sanders said that in. The interview I did months ago, it was the first time he said, I challenged him on it. I said, how are you gonna get Joe Manchin to vote for your bills? Because he's not gonna vote for him. And it turns out, of course, I was right. I partly know that because I also interviewed Joe Manchin a while back, and he has no interest in any progressive priorities. And so, and when challenged on that, Bernie said, I'll go do rallies in West Virginia. And so now he's been saying that in interviews ever since. Obviously, Joe Manchin's not happy about that because corporate Democrats are used to being really comfortable and cushy in their club and never ever challenged by anyone, not by the media, not by other Democrats. And actually the Republicans go softest on them because they're like, oh, you're gonna help me with my votes? Yeah, go ahead, Joe, yeah. And then they'll turn around and go, see, even Joe Manchin agrees with us. Oh, we're so bipartisan here, right? So he's a very useful tool for the Republicans.
Yep.
So now when Bernie says, yeah, if I'm president, I'm gonna challenge Joe Manchin, he's like, oh, my beloved power. No, this is unacceptable. I will not vote for Bernie under any circumstance. So when you hear Democratic leadership and establishment talking about unity, understand that it is 100% a lie. We just showed it to you and we just proved it to you. There's Joe Manchin saying, I will not vote for the Democratic nominee for president, and not one peep out of Democratic leadership. They think that is a perfectly fine thing to say. But if you dare say as a progressive that you might not vote for a corporate Democrat who's the nominee, they're like, how dare you? You cost the election. Has one Democrat in the country so far said Joe Manchin would cost us the election?
No, of course not. Not that I've seen.
So,
but the viciousness toward Bernie continues. They're 100%. Relentless.
Yeah. They will accuse Susan Sarandon of costing elections more than they'll accuse Joe Manchin, a sitting Democratic senator, saying, I will not vote for the Democratic nominee for president if it's Bernie Sanders.
Let me just say, and he has a history of this as well. So The Hill wrote about what happened in 2012. Manchin was also on the fence in the 2012 presidential election between Obama and then GOP nominee Mitt Romney, right? So he was like playing this game of, I don't know if I'm gonna vote for Obama. But I don't remember establishment Democrats calling him out on that either.
Never. Instead, in fact, they go in the exact opposite direction, and Chuck Schumer say, no, we can't vote on that. Joe Manchin doesn't want to vote on that. I don't want to jeopardize Joe Manchin. Why do we have these corporate Democrats in office if they prevent bills from passing rather than help bills from passing? There's no logic in it except cold, hard cash. It's all about the donors and the corruption.
When we come back from the break, we're gonna discuss a fascinating new poll that shows that a giant portion of Republican voters do not trust Donald Trump. And then later on, we will discuss a Republican who wants to cancel student loan debt. Come right back. Trump has already launched Trump TV. In fact, they recently did a weather report. So why don't we go to the Trump Weather Channel and see what they have to say about this story.
Brett Ehrlich reporting live on Hurricane Dorian as the storm bears down here in Mobile, Alabama. And as you can see, the weather is actually pretty nice. We need to fix this shot. We need to make it seem like there's more of a hurricane. Okay, actually, let's go to some video of a hurricane. Oh God, that's what a hurricane would look like if one was here. And that's scary, isn't it? And actually, if you listen really close, you can hear the wind. Real natural debris. And I'm not even sure how the people here in Mobile will cope with the cleanup afterwards. So we're just really waiting we gotta get out of the shot. We gotta get out of the shot with bated breath to see what will happen. And ow, okay, all right, okay, that's back to you guys, back to you in the studio. All right. Mr. President, I can't fake rain. What do you mean use a Sharpie? As you can see, the rain is coming down in buckets. The rain's coming down all over the place, and there is no quarter. There is no quarter, no place to hide. I quit. I just quit.
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell an herbicide called Roundup. You should know that recent studies have linked this commercial herbicide to a significant increase in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. A diagnosis of this type of cancer can be devastating to you and your family, while Monsanto continues to profit from these sales. If you or a loved one were exposed to Roundup at work or at home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you might be entitled to financial compensation, and you have a right to take action now.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of The Damage Report, another week of the news. I am John Idarola, and we've got a doozy of a show for you. My God, is DC up its own ass today. We have put someone into power in our country who is so crazy, they have finally out-crazied North Korea.
The US is the only country in the world that isn't part of the Paris Climate Accord.
Yesterday, Donald Trump did exactly what he told us. He pulled the US out of the Iran nuclear accords.
People call the police on black people. People are fearful of black humans. There is no more to the story than racism.
I was gonna say we've been dealing with the issue of lead poisoning in this country, but that would imply that we're really doing something. We have an issue with lead poisoning and it continues. So 60 people are now dead. Some of them grandmothers, many of them children. The silence of politicians on both sides of the aisle. Just about only Bernie Sanders, maybe Tulsi Gabbard, and a few others have actually been critical of what happened there. And the rest are cowards hiding behind silence, refusing to admit what happened yesterday.
We have to be able to accept that we do things wrong in this country. You can fix and change things, make things even.
What's great about our country, and this is a great example of it, is everybody's pissed off. This is The Damage Report, and it's all about the threats facing us each day. When something's relevant, and it's hot, and it's in the news, you're not supposed to talk about it. Can we start talking about it now? Climate is changing fundamentally, extremely, and non-linearly. It's becoming worse now. It's not when the levees burst that is the problem. It's in the anticipation of that.
So I hope every human being is safe. And by human beings, I do not include multinational corporations, especially the ones that started climate change in the first place.
What we're currently doing right now in cutting emissions is clearly not enough. There will be ramifications to what Trump is doing. I don't want people to suffer, but I feel like there's gonna be a lot of suffering because we have an imbecile as our leader.
All right, back on the Young Turks on Halloween. A guy writes in, when Cenk asks, you mean Jenks. When Jenks asked why mentions a Dem, he said because his grandpa was a Democrat. That's from the interview that I did with him. It's an interesting reason why. Tyra says, Cenk, you're an attorney. Once a legal mind is trained, ain't no going back, unless your name is Rudy Giuliani.
Devastating point.
Indeed. By the way, I never believe in that mind training nonsense. But anyway.
I mean, just think about language. I mean, my first language was Armenian, but since I don't practice it every day, my Armenian is not so great. I mean, I can get by.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyways, Tommy Too Strong challenges me. I like that. Cenk, got to call you on this. Democratic Party has endorsed Bernie over an actual Democrat in Vermont. They would rather have an independent who caucuses with them than take the chance of a Republican in that seat. Tommy, really good counterpoint.
Too strong.
Yeah, I appreciate you chiming in on that. And then last one is from Twitter. Aaron Rodgers says, "You all give hope that one day real news will come back. Fun fact: even a Republican boss I had admitted that you all don't make things up or lie to prove a point." Well, thank you. We appreciate that. One of the reasons why conservatives have an open mind towards us from time to time is because we're not partisan hacks. They see us criticizing Democrats all the time. They're like, "Oh, that's weirdly honest." Like, and isn't that weird that no one else does? That there's just sides. Like, when's the last time you saw MSNBC anchors criticizing Democrats?
No, you guys, the truth sets you free. Like, the reason why I'm never afraid of a debate is because the usual tactic from someone on the right is, I'm just gonna go after Obama, right? And then usually I'll just be like, yeah, I agree. Obama actually did suck when it came to improving the economy for the vast majority of Americans. Is that all you've got?
Yeah, and then they're like, what? What?
Yeah.
Wait, what? Okay, so last thing, Tommy Too Strong, before you write in and say, oh no, Jank, I'm gonna challenge you again. I have seen MSNBC challenge a Democrat. You're right, Bernie Sanders.
Let's talk about polls. This one is very interesting. So, a new poll indicates that a huge portion of Republican voters actually do not trust Donald Trump. They do not believe he is an honest person, but the majority of them approve of the job he's doing in the White House. So this is an Associated Press and ORC Center for Public Affairs research poll, and it found that Trump's approval rating currently stands at 42%, while disapproval stands at 56%. Now, among Republicans, Trump is seen as a strong leader who stands up for what he believes in, but only 53% of them think that Trump is honest, and 31% find him undisciplined.
Yeah, I want to get into more of these numbers because they're really interesting, and I like how this is being described as a shock poll. It's a shock poll.
No, but it is. I don't know if shocking is the right word, but if I don't trust someone, I don't want them to be my leader. If someone is dishonest and I'm acknowledging that they're dishonest, I'm not going to approve of them. Like, the fact that they approve of him, they think he's doing a great job, but they don't trust him is amazing to me.
Amazing, but I think that there are some encouraging numbers in here. First of all, in terms of the devastation of Trump's polling numbers, I got another one for you. 61% of Americans think Trump does not have much respect for the country's democratic institutions. So that's encouraging because that's a big number, and they're right. So it's nice to see that 6 out of 10 Americans go, no, I can see it with my own eyes. Yeah, he does not believe in democracy, doesn't respect our democratic institutions at all. So then you go to whether he's a strong leader. Now, first of all, the big number here is 85% of Republicans still support Donald Trump, but that's not a shock poll to us. We've been telling you that all along. In fact, he's slipping a little bit. He usually is consistently in the 90s, so he's down to 85%. Losing 15% of Republican voters is an interesting development, okay? But when you ask more details, like when you ask Republicans, is he a strong leader? Now, I would have thought that number would be sky high. It's only 69%. Wow, that's interesting. So 3 out of 10 Republicans can see, ain't that strong. He's insecure.
Baby.
So look, that means the cult is not quite as strong as we thought it was, right? Because if you're a cult member of cult 45, if you will, then you would say, no, he's very strong and he's very effective and he's very honest, etc. Among Republicans, only 53% think he's honest. Only 53% think he's honest. That's amazing. And so, how about disciplined? Only 39% of Republicans believe he's disciplined. So I was worried that we were losing track of reality, that we had a significant chunk of the country who just didn't see the same things we saw. We would see,
We still do, Cenk.
Yeah, we would see a purple dress and they'd see a white dress or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so yes, that still applies to some decent chunk, but a lot more Republicans are like, no, I see it. The guy has no discipline at all. Not at all honest, and not that strong. I'll take that. Those are pretty good numbers. Are they proud of him? Only 65% of Republicans are proud of him. I would have thought that number would be 90%, because I would have thought that they'd look at him and be like, oh yeah, he hates the same people I hate, I'm proud of him, so what, right? But it's only 65%. And then excited, only 58% are excited by him. I would have thought that they'd be like, look, the guy lies every once in a while. Maybe he's not that disciplined, but I'm excited because he's fighting for my side. Nope, only 58%. I would have expected all these numbers to be in the 80s and 90s. So that's the part that I guess shocks me. And then his approval rating on foreign policy and healthcare among Republicans also lower than I would have expected. Yeah.
So how much of this do you think, and I mean at this point it's speculation, but how many of these respondents do you think are part of the so-called whisper voters, right? The people who will respond to the polls answering in a way that they deem is more acceptable, but in reality, they like Trump more than they're letting on?
I have no idea. Honestly, there's no evidence to determine that. I don't even have anecdotal evidence. Yeah. So in a sense, I hope these numbers are right. And remember, guys, overall, he's at 42 and disapproval is at 56, as we told you in the beginning of the story. That's really bad. That's super bad for an incumbent president a year before the election. We're losing track of how bad that is. Any other president, people are like, oh my God, are they gonna primary him within the party? Because if you're under 50%, you're in trouble. 42 is really bad. You're underwater by 14 points. Last thing, not having to do with Trump, but having to do with an important policy issue. 48% of Americans say the United States uses military force in foreign conflicts too much. 48%, 42 say the right amount. Only 9% believe the military force isn't used often enough. So when you turn on cable news, it's always pushing for war and conflict and why didn't you bomb Syria? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you keep the forces in, etc. But in reality, most of the country agrees. Only 9% want more force. That's a very small number. 48% say, no, we're doing too much, bring him back, bring him back. So that is both progressives and conservatives agreeing. So Trump did the withdrawal from Syria in a botched way, and it's not really a withdrawal because we just moved the troops around, right? But if he actually was for withdrawal, the country would agree with him, even though all of cable news doesn't.
Yeah, later in the show, we actually have a story about how Trump has ramped up the conflicts abroad, especially when it comes to CIA-backed groups in Afghanistan who have now been accused of committing war crimes. So don't be fooled by Trump. He's actually escalated conflict abroad and to a much higher degree compared to Obama. And Obama was terrible. So we'll get to that story and more later in the show. As always, if you're a member, you can check that out whenever you want because members have archives, access to the archives of our show, tyt.com/join to become a member. All right, so let's move on to some other news. So this is a surprising story. Wayne Johnson is a Republican who recently stepped down from Trump's administration. He was actually in charge of monitoring the student loan debt in the country, which has now reached $1.6 trillion. That's how out of control student loan debt is. So he is the only Republican on the record now who's saying, yeah, we should cancel student loan debt. But there is a giant caveat, and I don't want people to be fooled by him. Now take a look at what he has to say.
Your plan would allow people to forgive up to $50,000 worth of student loans, but it would also give people who who already paid theirs a $50,000 credit. And importantly, it would get the government out of the federal student loan business in the future, right? And how important is that last step in particular here?
Well, it's critically important. The federal government should not be in the business of making loans directly to consumers. It's for several different reasons, but probably the most important is that it's an unlimited supply of federal funds chasing an unlimited demand, and the student basically being the facilitator, encouraged by the schools to take on the debt which they burdened for decades. So it's critically important. The other piece of my plan that I think is also important is if you're going to cancel the debt, you don't want to get into a situation where there's going to be a recurrence of those types of loans from the federal government in the future. So you've got to go ahead and make the decision. How are you going to satisfy higher education, availability / attainment?
Right.
And that's the reason for a $50,000 go forward education credit allowance that people could use.
So while canceling a portion of student loan debt is something that I sort of agree with, I would like to have all the student loan debt canceled. The big problem here is that his ultimate goal or objective is to privatize all student loans. So the federal government would not give out student loans, which would actually be a disaster because the private loans have much higher interest rates. Understand that his proposal does nothing to make college affordable, so college tuition is gonna be just as expensive, but student loan debt is gonna be even more of a disaster if individuals taking out the loans have to rely on private banks or private lenders who charge a much higher interest rate compared to what the federal government charges. So student loan debt is an issue that really requires a comprehensive solution. And notice that he didn't say anything about one of the main drivers in the acceleration of student loan debt, which was these for-profit colleges. In fact, the vast majority of revenue that these colleges receive is from federal student loans. I think that the federal government should not give student loans to anyone going to for-profit colleges that are unaccredited, which is how the law is today. But Betsy DeVos is not following the law, and there's a big issue with that as well.
Right, but I do want to be fair to him. So first of all, first Republican to come out and go, this is untenable, and we need to start forgiving these debts because he said, let me give the exact quote, we made the mess, we need to fix it. So that's a positive development. And he did, to your point about, well, what is he gonna do for students going forward? He proposed a $50,000 education voucher that they could apply to college or vocational programs. So so that's going forward. So you wipe out the old debt and you can get a voucher going forward. And how about the people who already paid their debt? His proposal is a $50,000 tax credit to any college graduate who didn't borrow or had already paid off their debt. So that's, those are interesting parts of his proposal.
I like that because you need people who are salty about the fact that they paid off their student loan debt to be more accepting of doing something about the student loan debt crisis today.
Yeah. Look, he almost had it, but then him saying now, let's just keep going with this broken system, but make it even more broken by going to higher interest rate private loans. Like he just can't help himself because he's a Republican. He's like, the private market's gonna fix everything. He gets it, the whole thing is totally screwed, and he goes, well, we gotta do something about it, and he gets to the logical conclusion of what we should begin to do about it. But when you look at the long-term fix, he can't help but go back to his bad old ideas.
I agree, and he referred to his plan as a business-minded approach. And so he doesn't hide the fact that he's pro-privatizing and focusing on private industry in order to carry out these loans. And keep in mind, he's also running for US Senate out of the state of Georgia. So I don't know, this seems to be part of his campaign. I don't know how genuine he is in wanting to actually do something serious about student loan debt, but I will say that some parts of this proposal are fascinating. I do like it. And I haven't seen any other candidate, including progressive candidates, talk about what could be done for people who have paid off their student loan debt. So I really do like that approach. And keep in mind, he isn't going to cut Pell Grants. So this program, if it actually passed in the way that he envisions it, would be in addition to programs that we already have, including Pell Grants.
Well, there's a good progressive running for that seat, Ted Terry. He's a mayor in Georgia. You should check him out. He was on The Conversation. You could check it out at youtube.com/TYT Conversation. But back to him for a second. I actually believe he's genuine. He's actually worked in this industry for a long time. And if you're running for a seat in Georgia and you want to win the Republican primary, quitting the Trump administration and doing a proposal that's the opposite of the Trump administration is not necessarily the politically correct way of going within the Republican Party. So it does take a little bit of courage for him to do that. And again, he is the first Republican to have at least acknowledged the problem and head in this direction. So I'll give credit where credit is due. He just needs to fill out his policy a little bit more, like he needs to fill out his beard a little bit more.
I thought his beard was fine.
Put it up for a second, you'll see.
Let's still take a good look.
Okay, look, it's fine, it's nicely trimmed, but it is missing significant parts of the beard.
He looks like a very lovely gentleman, like in that photo.
He looks like he couldn't make up his mind between being from the 1970s and being a Quaker.
You're the worst. All right, well, some people have different facial hair patterns. Not everyone's the same. Not everyone's like you, Turkish guy.
What is it?
With your thick beard.
Oh, I don't even have a beard.
No, I know, but if you like give it an hour or two, you will.
That's true. That's true. For one Movember, I grew out a mustache. Now, it made me look 200 times more Turkish. We cover the important stories on this show.
We do, we do. In fact, after the break, we're gonna come back with the most important story of the day. How are Donald Trump's feelings toward Melania Trump? Does he believe that she loves him?
Oh, I love this story, and you're gonna love this story.
Yeah.
Share the stream and make sure you come back.
On my mother's dying bed at 92 years old, former sharecropper, her last words were, "Do not let them take our votes away from us."
We are witnessing a tidal wave of voter suppression around the country. And Georgia, which is becoming ground zero.
Kemp is illegally removing people from Georgia's voters list.
And my vote will not be counted.
My vote was not counted. Old people who can't vote, there's young people who can't vote, there's people in every county who can't vote. I'm not gonna be able to vote myself.
Target people of color, poor people, the elderly.
We're human. We have our rights to vote just like anybody else.
This is systematic. If you look at what has happened across this country, 40 states have passed some kind of law to make it more difficult for people to vote.
Look at Alabama,
Arkansas,
North Carolina, Ohio,
Kansas,
North Dakota,
Michigan,
Wisconsin, and Georgia, which is becoming ground zero.
We are not going to let them take from us what our grandparents and parents fought and suffered and died to give us in the first place.
We are here to resist an ID law that is undemocratic, unconstitutional, and immoral.
Her last words were, "Do not let them take our votes away from us."
We talk about TYT Army being so strong. Usually they help us run our show. Now they're gonna help us run the country.
Like this. It's time that we reclaim democracy for the people.
We had a huge victory for Wolfpack.
When Lincoln said this was a country by, of, and for, he said of the people, not of corporations.
Our representatives don't represent us.
Whoa, democracy!
United, we are too strong. There's thousands of volunteers, and you could be among them. Money is killing our democracy.
96% of Americans want it.
When you get the power back, oh, that feels good. This is just the beginning. Let's go get them, man. Up and at them. Knock, knock. We're coming for them. Wolf-pack.com.
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell a herbicide called Roundup, but you should know that that herbicide is a potential killer. Recent studies have linked Roundup to significant increases in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. That's a cancer that can be devastating to you and the people you love. While Roundup continues to cause cancer, Monsanto continues to make huge profits from the sale of Roundup. They will not take it off the market. If you or a loved one are exposed to Roundup at work or home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you may be entitled to financial compensation, and it's important for you to take action now and hold Monsanto accountable.
It's winter, and it's cold this time of year, isn't it? Well, it might feel chilly, and the wind might bite at your nose. Maybe you want to snuggle up with a hot chocolate, or wrap up warm and wear your biggest coat. But in the grand scheme of things, our earth is too hot. And it's getting even hotter. Our seasons are getting confused. Lots of birds are nesting earlier, and spring flowers are coming out too soon. This is what climate change looks like. It's affecting so many of the things we love, both here in our own backyards and around the world. But we have hope, because we know that together we can protect them if we act now and everyone does their bit. So this Christmas, give a gift of love and show the world you care.
All right, back on the Young Turks. If you're watching on YouTube, it's super easy to join YouTube membership. You get badges that show us that you guys are Young Turks members. You get access to the post games, and at the highest level, all of our videos as well. It's the little blue join button underneath. Check that out. By the way, Shop TYT is doing a special sale for Halloween. You got to put in the promo code Spooky15 because you're gonna get 15% off of long sleeves and hoodies, including the awesome one I was wearing on Old School earlier this week. So Spooky15 to get that discount. A couple of quick tweets for you guys or comments. In Crime says, Trump supporter logic, he might be a liar, but he's our liar. Speaking of post games, I explained that a different variation of that I actually did hear from a Trump voter in one of our post games. Super Breeze 64 says, "Whoa, Cult 45, that needs to be on a T-shirt." ShopTYT.com. Okay, if it was on a long sleeve, you could get a 15% off today, but it's not yet. But we'll work on it. And last one, just for fun. Real Time on Twitter writes in, Wayne Johnson does Kenny Rogers covers in his spare time. Love it. Love it. Okay, Casper.
All right. We all know that there are rumors that Melania Trump and Donald Trump might not have the most affectionate relationship, but now we have proof that that's the case. In fact, a reporter for Time tweeted out the following. At a private fundraiser last night, Trump talked about meeting Steve Scalise's wife after he was shot. She cried her eyes out when I met her at the hospital that fateful day. I mean, not many wives would react that way to tragedy. I know mine wouldn't.
Wow. Wow. Your wife wouldn't even cry if you got shot?
But I get it. No, it's terrible.
Shots fired. Okay, there's two parts of this story that are amazing. First of all, Trump saying like actually three parts. One is like, oh, a wife crying when their husband is shot and might die.
Fake news.
No, amazing. Why is that amazing? Isn't that like literally the most natural and normal thing you would expect?
Yes.
And so that goes to is outside of the marriage thing, etc. That goes to the guy feels no empathy at all. So he's a sociopath. So he doesn't understand why you would cry if someone you love got shot and might die. Just doesn't even get it.
So the way that I interpreted it, and you could be right, but the way that I saw it was, has any woman ever been with Donald Trump because of his charm or his looks or for anything other than the fact that he's wealthy? So there's something really sad about that, because has any woman that he's ever been with actually loved him? So maybe like his worldview is that this is amazing because I've never experienced a woman who genuinely feels anything for me.
Yeah, that part is indisputable.
Yeah.
Right, that's the second part. And you can't, look, he says, I mean, not many wives would react that way to tragedy. I would hope almost every wife or husband would react that way to tragedy.
Yeah.
But he's never felt that love. And you're right, that's sad, and it makes me really happy.
Yeah, I know. I will say this about the Trump presidency. He has revealed things about myself that I do not like. Okay, so I'm gonna be honest about that, because I never found myself wishing bad things upon others. I would never get giddy or happy at the thought of someone being in a loveless marriage. But I do when it comes to Trump, because he's such a terrible person.
Yeah.
And for anyone who's judging, like, I get it, it's your right to judge, but at the same time, can you really judge when you consider the fact that this guy has had children die in cages under his watch? When this guy has made excuses for politically motivated violence over and over again? I mean, this guy he's the worst. I mean, let alone our actions abroad when it comes to Yemen and what we did in abandoning our Kurdish ally. Like, he has no empathy for anyone.
Yeah, so look, I'm a little bit torn on that, because the lib in me thinks, well, if he'd ever gotten any love, maybe he might not have turned into this monster. It's so obvious that his dad didn't love him either, and it would constantly call him baby and sad, and he kept having to bail him out, and he kept calling him a dummy, and so then apparently he never got it from any of his wives, etc. On the other hand, since he is such a monster to other people, over and over and over again, and has no empathy, and he's the president, so it winds up having gigantic effects for so many people in this country. The fact that he goes to sleep at night desperate and lonely and sad and pathetic, yeah, I'm sorry, but it does give me a little joy.
And I think it's part of the reason why he doesn't get much sleep to begin with. I mean, the guy never sleeps, and maybe this is part of the reason why. Nonetheless, we're gonna show you some fun video that can help you visualize the disdain that Melania Trump has for Donald Trump.
And it started to rain, Mr. President, when you came to the platform. And it's my prayer that God will bless you, your family.
Some on social media are convinced the president reached for her hand and she rejected him.
Is that really a swat? The moment has now gone viral. First Lady Melania Trump appears to swat away the president's outreached hand when they arrived in Israel Monday. Here it is again, close up and in slow motion.
Some of them, but the SWAT is 100% real, okay? But I had never seen that first video before. Okay, wait,
yeah.
That was epic. That was epic. Oh my God, that's how she actually feels. Okay, oh yeah, you're looking at me. Okay, go away, go away.
God damn it, I hate you so much. How did I get myself into this?
Wow, that's amazing video. Okay, now the last part of this is, what do I keep telling you guys? He's too stupid to cover up his crimes. So in this case, there's no crime or anything like that. But any person with any sense wouldn't admit that their wife wouldn't grieve at all if they were shot. But he doesn't get it. So he's like, I mean, not many wives would react that way to tragedy. I know mine wouldn't. You just admitted your wife doesn't like you at all, at all. Like that's, if you're president, that might not be a popular thing to admit. It's kind of awkward, right? But he doesn't get it. Not bright enough. I wish the whole country would do this to him. And soon they might.
All right, well, we're gonna end on a devastating story, but it's an important one, so let's get to it. A CI-backed group, an Afghan strike force, has committed war crimes in night raids that they've been conducting against the Taliban in Afghanistan. This is according to a new report by Human Rights Watch, and the details are incredibly devastating. So since 2001, the CIA has maintained a counterterrorism operation in Afghanistan, parallel to but distinct from the US military operation. It has continued to recruit, equip, train, and deploy Afghan paramilitary forces in pursuit of Al-Qaeda and Taliban forces. And since 2014, militants affiliated with the Islamic State, also known as ISIS. Now here's where things get bad. Donald Trump in 2017 really did ramp things up. In 2017, the US authorized Afghan special forces to call in strikes for support, even without US forces present to identify the targets. Changes to targeting directives have meant that airstrikes are hitting more residential buildings, while a decreased US ground presence and a reliance on local Afghan intelligence sources has meant there is less information available about the possible presence of civilians in those buildings. So understand what's happening here. Things like drone strikes under the Obama administration were bad enough, but it's much worse now under Donald Trump's watch. Okay, so those airstrikes, those drone strikes, they haven't stopped. In fact, they've accelerated under Trump, and he's conducting them with even less intel.
Yeah, so the details are really bad. So one diplomat, this is not even Human Rights Watch, this is a diplomat, says that they are in fact death squads, and they're going in and killing people in extrajudicial ways, forced disappearances, and even attacking healthcare facilities to go after the wounded. Wow. And so now look, it's not like the other guys are good guys. The Taliban just detonated 2 bombs, killed 48 people the other day. But when you tally up all the deaths, we now, pro-government forces are killing more civilians than the Taliban. So we continue to characterize the Taliban as terrorists. I obviously understand that. But if we're killing more civilians and indiscriminately and with death squads than the terrorists are, what does that make us?
And also, I'm not really understanding the logic of Donald Trump's foreign policy, because remember, it wasn't too long ago that he was open to inviting the Taliban to the White House in order to negotiate US troops pulling out of the country, right? So, I mean, look, this report is about the civilians, right? It's not about targeting the Taliban or other terrorist organizations. The war crimes pertain to the civilians who are losing their lives as a result of these actions. And again, these are US-backed death squads, and this is exactly what they're doing. Let me give you more information about the Human Rights Watch report. It's a 53-page report, and it describes the Afghan forces committing summary executions and other grave abuses without accountability during 14 night raids conducted from late 2017 to mid 2019. The abuses, as Cenk mentioned, included extrajudicial killings of civilians, forced disappearances of detainees, and attacks on healthcare facilities that treat insurgents. I mean, it's disgusting. And so, look, when people ask, how do people become radicalized? Where does the radicalization come from? These are the types of US actions abroad that help to radicalize people. When you're killing innocent civilians, when you're relying on incredibly faulty intel or no intel at all, which leads to the death of civilians, yeah, people are gonna be upset, and it helps in radicalizing people in Middle Eastern countries.
And then the right wing say absurd things like they hate us because they hate us. Joe Scarborough repeated that 3 times once. Or maybe they hate us because we're indiscriminately killing civilians in their country, and we've been doing that for 18 long years. What are we doing in Afghanistan? Is 19 years gonna do it? Is 20 years gonna do it? Look, Trump said he would withdraw troops when he was running. That's actually incredibly popular, both in the right wing and the left wing. Now, he's gotten yelled at a bunch of times, and he doesn't know what he's doing, and he's a bumbling fool. He loves making deals, so he wanted to invite the Taliban and Camp David to make a deal. But when that fell apart, he's like, oh yeah, then okay, well, then we're gonna go and kill more people. To what end? To what end? So last year, 3,804 people were killed in Afghanistan, including in these type of activities, including 927 children. So every once in a while, you see a chemical attack in Syria, and it is outrageous and abhorrent, right? And they'll show the kids who were killed in the gas attack. And then Trump will come out and goes, oh, the beautiful babies. We killed 927 children in Afghanistan in that conflict. Nobody cares, nobody cares. They were civilians, they didn't do anything wrong. And that war marches on mercilessly. And no matter who's in office, Democrat or Republican, we still stay there and get absolutely nothing accomplished. Bring the troops home, for God's sake.
And stop bombing these countries, because that's, bringing the troops home is half of it. Doing the drone strikes and the airstrikes are bad as well.
Absolutely. I got an amazing interview coming up next.
Old school's pitched to me from Cenk. It'll just be me, you, Jesus, Ben, and maybe Michael. And we're like, okay, cool. I can do that every week. As you can see, me, Jesus, Ben, Dank.
This is my problem with Forever 21. This is like a really cool turtleneck. Like it looks nice, it looks soft, it looks professional. I can wear it to work. And then you pick it up and turn it around and the back says taco booty. And it's like, what?
When you make the order, it says, don't exceed $20.01. So I'll just order literally anything to get it as close to that as I possibly can.
I'm sorry that I ordered $45 worth of food and got an email saying, sir, would you like to rethink that? What are you talking about?
And she was like, does mom know you curse that much? And I was like, I didn't curse at all in the movie. I played silent mom.
Right.
If you're looking for a heart attack, the short way, baby.
Wrong. I did put mayonnaise on it. I'm the most in shape, overweight person you'll find.
That's right.
We're in Hollywood.
I
Raise
know,
your hand if you're not a vegan.
Okay.
See, nobody.
He's like Kevin with Ben Affleck. He's like afraid to text me.
He was like, why didn't you answer my call? I called you 39 times.
Yuck.
But what makes you stop right before 40? What makes you say, nah, man, I ain't doing that no more. I'm cool.
And I called you back on the air. And I was like, okay, Kevin Smith, big shot. What the you said you'd come on and you didn't come on.
I'm sure I took that very well.
Yeah, you did. You called me back the next day and said, I thought it was 7 a.m.
I don't mean to get upset.
I was in hell. I was just like, oh my God, the theater's empty, nobody's here. Everyone on screen keeps cursing. Why did I let this happen? And the whole thing looks like it was shot through a glass of milk. My mom's gonna be so mad.
There's now deep fake porn. I don't know if you guys have heard of this.
I heard of it. I just had some in the car.
I'll tell you who I'm not Ben Mankiewicz. Have you guys ever felt that?
Not ever.
But I imagine you could be famous and not give a shit. But it's tough to be a human and not give a shit.
We gotta let the podcast guys go to TYT.com/join to become a member, get the whole show. And now it's just the three of us.
That's it.
Okay,
this is the intimate hour.
By the way, the last half hour of this, we're not even rolling.
He's a bad neighbor.
Neighbors know I'll be watching.
We're always
Please
gonna
tell me you do not waste your wife's time with this ridiculously stupid argument.
The Bad News Bears is a movie that taught an entire generation how to not win. How to lose gracefully.
See, I watch movies.
Kingsley.
I'm done with both of you.
Once Greg starts laughing, I can't stop. We're out of time. So
are we?
Yeah, I know.
That was 90?
Yeah.
I was just getting started.
And I was just gonna ask you about getting high.
Snoogans, Snoochie Boochies.
And members, of course, you can get the whole damn thing. TYT.com join and free trial. And old school with the old folks.
Good
John, come back.
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell a herbicide called Roundup, but you should know that that herbicide is a potential killer. Recent studies have linked Roundup to significant increases in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. That's a cancer that can be devastating to you and the people you love. While Roundup continues to cause cancer, Monsanto continues to make huge profits from the sale of Roundup. They will not take it off the market. If you or a loved one are exposed to Roundup at work or home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you may be entitled to financial compensation, and it's important for you to take action now and hold Monsanto accountable.
Breaking news with Brett Ehrlich. This is Brett Ehrlich with Breaking News with Brett Ehrlich. Bernie Sanders wants to break Wall Street, and he wants to break it real bad.
All right, back on the Young Turks. A little bit later in this half hour, we're gonna bring in Kenny Clips to talk about some of his late-breaking stories. And then the post game, the Washington National fans abused Donald Trump again. So you're gonna love that, TYT.com/join. or that little blue button if you're watching on YouTube that says join on it. That's another way to join. That's through YouTube membership. All right, so now joining me is Conrad Shaw and Dea Schlossberg. They worked on some amazing movies before, including How to Let Go of the World and Love All the Things That Climate Can't Change. That's the Josh Fox movie that Dea helped to produce, the story of plastic. But now they've got a new movie coming out called Bootstraps. Conrad and Dea, welcome to the Young Turks.
Thanks nice to be here.
Yeah, great to have you guys. So first, let me just dive in and ask you, Dea, what's Bootstraps about?
Bootstraps is looking at how 11 households all over the US do when given a basic income for 2 years, no strings attached.
Oh, fascinating. All right, Conrad, for the folks at home that don't know, what is universal basic income?
Universal basic income is, a lot of people don't actually know that that's essentially what Andrew Yang is running on for president, if you've heard of him.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do know that.
Yeah,
because he says it all the time.
But I've run into a lot of people who don't actually link the two together. But basically it's that everyone deserves a floor of income that's guaranteed and unconditional in society that allows for a basic level of survival living that is not tied to selling your labor or fulfilling any sort of conditions.
Okay, so Dea, you guys followed people who actually did get universal basic income, right?
Yeah, there are 21 individuals and 11 households all over the US. We tried to replicate basically the demographics of the US in who we're following. So a range of geography and age and background and income level, from homeless to solidly middle class. And we're capturing all sorts of incredible stories.
Yeah, so I can't wait to see how this turned out. I'm deeply curious, and so is Andrew Yang. I'm sure he's watching right now. But before we get to that, one more question about how this all got set up. How'd you guys even do this? I mean, who did someone fund the universal basic income for these particular families?
Yeah, it wasn't easy. The project itself was sort of bootstrapped. It was something we had an idea for 3 years ago, and we decided we didn't want to have a bunch of talking heads discussing it. We had a lot of interviews with experts and things, but we decided it'd be best to show UBI. And so we started with a crowd fund and a whole lot of personal debt, and then we started cobbling together enough to stagger some of the stories in. And then eventually we got a couple larger donors, 2 years later, that allowed us to bring everyone else into the trial.
All right, now without further ado, what happened?
So a little bit of a spoiler, but everybody is doing better than they were when they started in a lot of respects. Certainly financially, not a big surprise to a lot of people who just think it's kind of common sense. But yeah, it's consistent with the other studies that have shown that health outcomes improve, education improves, substance use goes down, people don't work any less.
I think the really special thing to me, though, is about the way that we're showing this compared to the other trials, like Stockton and the Canada ones, is that we're telling the full story. We're with them for 2 years, and it's a real reminder that stuff happens in life, and it's still hard, and people struggle. But here's what it could look like if you have something coming in every week. If you know it's going to be there, here's what it might look like for someone who is a young family in Montana or farmers in Mississippi or whatever.
It helps weather life's events and life's setbacks.
So, I mean, this really is spot on for what Yang is proposing. It's $1,000 a month, just like he's saying. Although you do get more for kids, you get $334 a month for each child that they have, right? So, look, I don't think anybody's going to be overly surprised that their standard of living is a little bit better, because that's a nice amount of extra money to have for a family, especially when they weren't expecting it and it's on top of what they normally spend. But I guess the question that people have is, yes, but when did they turn into bums?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Conrad.
I mean, that's part of the design of the project, is to address the human nature question of UBI, and not particularly to sell UBI, but to let it speak for itself if it works or if it doesn't. And you run into two questions with UBI, and one is like how you're going to pay for it and all the money stuff. We're not really dealing with that with bootstraps. We're dealing with the other one, which is, won't people just be lazy or do drugs or, play video games? And I mean, if you really take some time to think about it and think about yourself in that situation, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense that someone would sit and stare at the wall for 50 years because they're able to. It's not really how human beings work. People want to matter. They want to grow. At least that's what we're finding.
Right.
It's funny, when we started the project, we went and just interviewed people on the street. This was several years ago, before basic income was kind of a household term, and asked people if they had heard of it, what they think of it, what they would do with it. And almost across the board, people's initial reaction was that, worrying, like, won't that disincentivize people from doing something? And then without fail, we would ask them, well, what would you do if you were given $1,000 a month? And they all had amazing answers.
I'd say it was like 50-50. I'd say like half of people said, oh, that'd be great. And half people said, well, people will just leech off of it. But then like 99.9%, except the people that were joking, had a great answer for what they would do. So there was this huge disconnect that you see, where everyone has a really good plan for themselves that's justifiable for the economy and for everything, but they're worried about what other people will do. And that's part of that polarization in America, like not understanding each other.
So that's something that we really hope Bootstraps can speak to.
Right. That is really interesting. I hadn't thought of that. Like, they're like, oh no, I was spending great, but those other bums, I'm worried about them. And so my favorite assumption about it is that people would use it on drugs. Like, if you gave me an extra $1,000 a month, I don't know that I would spend it well, but I know I wouldn't do meth.
Well, I mean, what people don't seem to understand is that drugs, in a large part, like, it doesn't solve drugs. It's not a panacea for anything. But drugs, in large part, much like video games or overeating or sex, can be escapist. It's a way out when you don't see a way out. So if you give everyone a way forward, then there's less reason to escape into drugs or video games or gambling or whatever.
Yeah, and well, look, if that gives you a sense of what's in those folks' heads who say that. It's projection. Like, I would never assume that if I had an extra $1,000 that I would do way more drugs and dangerous drugs. That never even occurs to me, right? On the other hand, look, I want to talk about if out of is it 21 families, right? Did any of them, like
11?
Oh,
It's
sorry,
21
11.
people.
21 people,
so some
11
are families,
families.
some are individuals.
Yeah. So look, I'm telling you, there's at least a portion of it that I would spend, quote unquote, poorly. Like, would I gamble more? Maybe, right? Would I want to have an extra steak dinner? Yeah, definitely, right? And so I don't know that that's poorly. That gives me more enjoyment, and then there's nothing wrong with enjoyment. Although, like, conservatives get mad at that, like, oh, then people would start to enjoy their lives. Yeah. Okay, but it's kind of a weird criticism.
We want people to have. I mean, we're not trying to. The movie is really more Daya's thing, the series, which is exploring UBI. If you follow me online, I'm openly an advocate for UBI, so I won't pretend I'm not. But all those things you just mentioned, well, the gambling, even a little bit too. But like, you buy a steak dinner, that's money back into the economy. These are all. And you're taking care of yourself. It's self-care, and it helps your psychological state. It helps you be a happier person out on the street with me when I walk by you.
So, but guys, we're all 11 families, all rosy, and they all spent it perfectly on balancing their budgets and paying for their kids' schooling, etc. Or was there anything they did where you were like, oh, okay, well, we got to tape it. What can we do?
Well, a lot of them still have about 6 months left to go, so they still have some room to make decisions either way. But for the most part, I would say it hasn't drastically changed how people decide what to do with their money. It has mostly like I said earlier, has helped people weather the bumps that come up in life.
It helped them follow through on the things they wanted to do too. It really accelerated the things they wanted in life. I think one of the things we learned a lot. So my role is I designed the trial, and there was a lot that went into deciding how to design the trial as compared to like the Stockton trial or Andrew Yang's dividend or the one in Canada. And one of the things that's very important about UBI that people don't talk about a lot is frequency. The idea of getting it once a month rather than once a year as a lump sum, like the Alaskan dividend, is important because there's something to knowing that everyone's safe at all times. So we actually upped the frequency even more, and we do it on a weekly basis because I've worked enough low-end jobs where I know a bi-weekly check is still leaving people insecure by the end of that 2 weeks, the people in low-end jobs. So you want to know, we have everything, it comes in every single Wednesday, and we have conversations all the time with them where it's like they're planning around Wednesday, and Wednesday is the day that, you know, they can make that move or that they can, you know, follow through on that thing they need. And if having it be a weekly thing, I think all in all has been better.
Yep. All right, everybody can check out bootstrapsfilm.com, bootstrapsfilm.com. Prepare to be inundated and run over by the Yang Gang. Thank you guys. We appreciate you joining us on the Young Turks.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
No problem. All right, when we come back, what story has Kenny Clips broken lately? And is there any chance that we see the return of the lavender sweater vest? We'll be right back.
On my mother's dying bed at 92 years old, former sharecropper, her last words were, "Do not let them take our votes away from us."
We are witnessing a tidal wave of voter suppression around the country. And Georgia, which is becoming ground zero.
Kemp is illegally removing people from Georgia's voters list.
And my vote will not be counted.
My vote was not counted. Old people who can't vote, there's young people who can't vote, there's people in every county who can't vote.
I'm not gonna be able to vote myself.
Target people of color, poor people, the elderly.
We're human. We have our rights to vote just like anybody else.
This is systematic. If you look at what has happened across this country, 40 states have passed some kind of law to make it more difficult for people to vote.
Look at Alabama,
Arkansas, North Carolina,
Ohio,
Kansas, North Dakota,
Michigan,
Wisconsin,
and Georgia, which is becoming ground zero.
We are not going to let them take from us what our grandparents and parents fought and suffered and died to give us in the first place.
We are here to resist an ID law that is undemocratic, unconstitutional, and immoral.
Her last words were, "Do not let them take our votes away from us."
We talk about TYT Army being so strong. Usually they help us run our show. Now they're gonna help us run the country.
Like this.
It's time that we reclaim democracy for the people.
We had a huge victory for Wolfpack.
When Lincoln said this was a country by, of, and for, he said of the people, not of corporations.
Our representatives don't represent us.
Whoa, democracy!
United, we are too strong. There's thousands of volunteers, and you can be among them. Money is killing our democracy.
96% of Americans want it.
When you get the power back, oh, that feels good. This is just the beginning. Let's go get them, man. Up and at them. Knock, knock. We're coming for them. Wolf-pack.com.
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell a herbicide called Roundup, but you should know that that herbicide is a potential killer. Recent studies have linked Roundup to significant increases in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. That's a cancer that can be devastating to you and the people you love. While Roundup continues to cause cancer, Monsanto continues to make huge profits from the sale of Roundup. They will not take it off the market. If you or a loved one are exposed to Roundup at work or home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you may be entitled to financial compensation, and it's important for you to take action now and hold Monsanto accountable.
It's winter, and it's cold this time of year, isn't it? Well, it might feel chilly and the wind might bite at your nose. Maybe you want to snuggle up with a hot chocolate or wrap up warm and wear your biggest coat. But in the grand scheme of things, our earth is too hot, and it's getting even hotter. Our seasons are getting confused. Lots of birds are nesting earlier, and spring flowers are coming out too soon. This is what climate change looks like. It's affecting so many of the things we love, both here in our own backyards and around the world. But we have hope, because we know that together we can protect them if we act now and everyone does their bit. So this Christmas, give a gift of love and show the world you care.
All right, welcome back to the Young Turks. Okay, joining me now is Ken Klippenstein, our senior investigative reporter, otherwise known as Kenny Clips. Ken, you're aware of your fame now as a comic book hero?
Along with the Krasensteins as well. So I had to join in there, yeah.
You know, you're also getting a little bit of a Ken Bone thing going on here, no disrespect, but you had the lavender sweater vest and now you got the red one going on like Ken did. You're in the middle of the country, no wonder you're in an undisclosed bunker. I mean, there are things happening, they just are. One of the things that's happening is you were featured, one of your stories was featured in Congress. So I want to play this clip for folks. This is Representative Cedric Richmond talking about a story that you broke, and then I want you to come back and explain to us what that story was. Let's watch first.
An August 8, 2019 article by the Young Turks entitled Leaked FBI Documents Reveal Bureau's Priorities Under Trump. We're alerted about something called Iron Fist. Is that an ongoing, does it exist, one? And two, is it still ongoing? And our information tells us it was to target individuals it classified as black identity as extremists.
Well, I'm not familiar with the name that you just used, so I can't engage specifically on that question.
So later, Representative Richmond asked him to get more information and come back to them. So what do you make of that, Ken?
I would guess that he doesn't know, or that he does know what Iron Fist is, because it's one of the programs under their FBI priorities list, which was leaked to me and which we subsequently published. And that priorities list determines not just ideologically what their priorities are, but also where the resources are going to go towards. And within the priorities, one of the top programs listed was Iron Fist, as he mentioned, which was not just to monitor and surveil so-called black identity extremists, but even to recruit informants from within these so-called groups. So I would be surprised if the director of the FBI didn't know about that, and if he doesn't, that also doesn't speak well of him, because he should.
So you got this from internal documents, so we know with great certainty that that program does in fact exist.
Absolutely, and the congressman does too. I imagine he's just trying to get the director on the record.
Right, and so let's talk about the program. Let's give a little bit of background and history here for the folks who aren't familiar with it. We did cover it earlier in the show when you broke the story originally, but for people who don't know, what do they mean black identity extremists, and then how does Iron Fist fit into that?
What's particularly concerning about this designation is not necessarily that they're targeting extremists, but the way that they go about defining it. And if you look at the, we published the FBI priorities list, but then also the definition of each of those priorities. And the way they defined that was kind of radicals arising from, discontent with, treatment of black individuals within the country. And then it actually specifically mentions the Ferguson protests, which I thought was very alarming.
So is that part of the original tracking of black identity extremists that you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay, so what do they do with the Ferguson protests, for example? What does it mean to track people? And are they tracking all the Ferguson protesters in case there's an extremist in there? Do they have intel that there in fact is a splinter group of extremists? I don't know that you know all of that, but I'm curious as to what they think that they're tracking.
Well, given that these are policy memoranda that we were able to obtain, it sort of describes their overall strategy, but it doesn't get into very granular detail beyond saying that they're recruiting informants within these groups, noting that it's been difficult for them to recruit informants, which implies that they have some familiarity with this process and that this isn't necessarily something that, at the time of the publication was just speculation. It seems like they're actually actively doing it, and they've drawn conclusions from it. But what was shocking is that they also describe general discontent and separatist groups, things like that, that could be construed very broadly, and not necessarily say you're targeting a militant group like Al Qaeda or something like that. The things that they describe are not necessarily operationally coordinated or defined groups, and that just, I think, invites mission creep in the sense that that this can be broadly applied to many different groups.
Yeah. So in fact, first of all, I like that the Ferguson protesters are apparently too strong to break and hard to get informants in that situation. And there's nothing to break. They're just protesters. One of the leaders of the Ferguson protests is Cori Bush. She's now running for Congress. So they might have actually been targeting people who might one day be in Congress. So look, they're from the outside, Ken, let me put it this way. They look like they're in search of a problem that doesn't necessarily exist. Is there a widespread domestic terrorism happening from Black identity extremists that I'm unaware of?
What's interesting is if you look at the documents, when they describe another one of the threats, white supremacists, they're able to cite, a bunch of different examples of not just, illegal activity, but ones that resulted in deaths and in some cases large numbers of deaths. And in the case of so-called Black identity extremists, as I recall, they don't cite a single example of it. Certainly far fewer than the white supremacists. And if my recollection is correct, they don't cite a single example of a death resulting from this group.
Okay, and so all right, yeah, we don't see it in the news almost ever, and it turns out no, there isn't anything really much internally that they know that we don't know. But nonetheless, they decided just in case they'll target Black groups doing the most patriotic thing you could do, which is looking for a redress of grievances from your government and exercising your freedom of speech. And so this is concerning. Is it part of the issue here, Ken, that they view groups that are on the left, including African-American groups, as more of a threat to the system, that instinctually the FBI looks at it that way, as opposed to groups on the right, which they feel like, oh, well, that's normal, that's just part of America?
From sources inside the Bureau, what they're telling me is that there was enormous pressure to try to create a sort of false equivalency, not even necessarily from a cynical perspective, although that may have come from the administration, but also given that they've had to kind of ramp up their efforts against white supremacists, this attitude that, we've got to apply this across the board so it doesn't look like we're being unfair to any particular ethnic group. The folks inside the Bureau I've known to be, pretty admirably objective. But when problems arise is when you've got pressures from the politicals at the top of it, appointees from the administration and then the administration itself. So I think there was an effort to try to conflate the threat of various groups as they've had to sort of increase their response to white nationalists.
So they did get criticism for this idea of Black identity extremists earlier. So it looks like in the story that you uncovered that they rolled it into this catch bag basically of all extremists. And that's the thing called Iron Fist, if I understand it right. And that could be part of, well, look, I'm looking at right wing and white extremists, and they're the ones doing all these killings and deaths and attacks, etc. But I don't want right wingers to get upset at me, so I'm going to cover myself politically by also looking into black identity extremists, honestly, whether they exist or don't really exist, or if they're anywhere near the level of threat that the right-wing extremists are.
Yeah, no, I think that's a completely reasonable supposition, and also that's what I'm hearing from the inside too.
Right, and so now that congressmen have seen your story and are asking the FBI director about it, what could be some possible ramifications of that going forward?
What's interesting about this story is that I know a lot of people inside the bureau that were unhappy with how this was carried out, and I can't get into too much specifics because I have to protect sources, but there's a great desire to have more resources to meet the threat of white supremacist groups, and it's not necessarily that they're being roadblocked, but they're having to change their posture so much that they can't really keep up with it, and so I think a consequence of that is that it would really help if Congress is able to bear on them, because they really have the power of the purse strings, and then also can make it easier to change the nature of the funding away from these sort of militant groups like Al-Qaeda or Islamic State, and moving it towards what we're really facing, which is all these lone wolf attacks, many sort of white supremacist in character, and I'm hearing a lot of sort of indications from folks in Congress that I know, staffers and so on, that is something that, in part because of the story, they're bearing down on, and I'm really appreciative of that, because that was really the reason I wrote the story.
Right, and so I want people to understand, last thing here, that it's not just that they're unnecessarily looking into African-American protest groups and not only wasting resources, but perhaps violating their rights, but they're also misdirecting resources that could go to real threats, and if you have the resource in the right place, you might save some lives, right, Ken?
Absolutely, and again, this is what I'm hearing from lots of folks, not just in the bureau, but in federal law enforcement generally. This is not some far left position to want to provide them with resources, because this is what the technocrats and the experts that actually do this stuff are saying as well. It's just that the political will doesn't yet exist, but there does seem to be growing pressure.
All right, so everybody check out tyt.com/investigates, where you'll see Ken's stories, Jonathan Larson's stories, and including the last one that Ken broke about how the military has been given the order to be able to use lethal force inside the country. That appears to be a violation of the law, and so it's another important document that Ken wound up getting his hands on. So please check that out. Amazing stories that Ken breaks on a regular basis. So thanks for joining us, Ken. I appreciate it.
Hey, great to be with you, Jay. Thanks.
All right. So when we come back for the members, we got a fun post game for you guys, including the Nationals winning the World Series and then going after Donald Trump again. So nothing but fun. tyt.com/join to become a member, or for the YouTube members, you got that little blue button that says join underneath the videos if you're watching on YouTube. It's a good way to get Young Turks membership on YouTube. And at $4.99, you get post games there as well, along with a couple of other features. So check that out. All right, we'll be back.
morning, Brett. Post game.
It's been a minute since I've worn this outfit on TYT Air because the last time I wore it was the 2016 election night.
You wore that on 2016 election night?
I sat over there on 2016 election night wearing this flying squirrel outfit. And it was a sad, sad day. I think I yelled at Hillary Clinton or something. I remember, because I absolutely did. But I was equally as buzzed as I am now. I'm just a little bit buzzed.
I'm not buzzed at all.
Not yet. But JR and I shot Happy Half Hour, as was mentioned during main show. It will happen tomorrow night at 7 on TYT's Over the Top offerings. TYT on Zumo, Pluto, but for members like you definitely get it.
Yeah.
Like it's straight to you.
Yeah, you guys should also, if you haven't already, download the app. I'm not doing this as like an ad.
Sounds like you are.
I know it does,
Sounds
but like
a placement.
I'm just giving you my recommendation because I use the app and it's really, really good.
App is really, really, really amazing.
Yeah.
It's just everything you want the way you want it.
Okay, let's talk about stuff.
Okay, so I wanted to share these two stories. It was my 15-year college reunion this last weekend, and I went up there. And I went to school with some people who are very rich now. The open letter to Facebook from Facebook employees when they cite like one of the people who laid out the original ethos of of Facebook, they quote like my keyboardist in my band. He was very big in the company. And I have friends that are not very big in the company but are quite wealthy. But what struck me is like I want to pitch a show that's like how the world really works. And I want to tell two quick stories about two conversations I had that took place when I was in Palo Alto this weekend for my 15 reunion. One was with an Uber driver. She's about 73 years old. For 30 years, she's been a preschool teacher. And the preschool that she teaches at was recently purchased by a Chinese conglomerate. And they bought a bunch of other campuses and brought them all together. And they were able to reduce the number of campuses and reduce the overall number of enrolled children in the schools, but they were able by about 50%. So 50% less students, 8% more profit. And as a result, she has had to do a lot of stuff to make ends meet because her hours were throttled and she isn't making as much money.
And she's 73.
And she's 73, so the reason she's driving the Uber is to make ends meet, which they don't.
Oh my God.
So she had to move out of the trailer that she was renting in a nice little trailer park, and she had to move in with her sister, and she had to drive Ubers. And previously, as this was all starting to happen, she was able to drive in the morning or in the night, but definitely in the middle of the day during her 2-hour break between the morning shift and the afternoon shift. But unfortunately, she can't do that anymore because as part of this win for the company and lose for her, it's an hour break or an hour and a half break, and she can't reliably get back to campus for her afternoon shift. So she loses that amount of extra money as well. So she had to move in with her sister, win for the company, lose for her. So she has to, it doesn't work. Here's another story.
I got to comment on that a little bit.
Yeah.
You told me about it earlier in the week and I didn't really like take it in like I did right now.
Yeah.
Cause like, there's just so much pain and suffering you can take in, like doing this job and like the stuff that we have to read and deal with. And it was just like another like, oh, here's a person who should be retired and should be enjoying like, not to sound, I don't know if this is like a bad thing to say, but at 73, it's like toward the end of your life, you should be enjoying yourself. You should be retired. And to think of a 73-year-old woman who has done her part, she has a career, she had at least a decent career before, and now she finds herself driving Uber. And I guess my brother had to do that at one point because he's a dad now, and daycare is really, really expensive. And I remember I did like a little side hustle thing that paid, and it paid a couple $100. And as soon as I got that check, I gave it to my brother and I was like, please stop driving Uber. Like, you work all day. Like, and he's like, no, you keep it. Like, you worked for it. And I was like, no, this is extra money that I earned doing something on the side. Like, it was an appearance somewhere or whatever. I was like, it took no work to do this, to make this. Like, it was just a really lucky thing.
But that's gotta be a weird conversation with your brother. I mean, as like a dude, I hate to say it, be like my sis, I don't have a sister, but like, don't give me, so you take that money. Like, what are you doing? You're gonna just give me money?
There was a minute of pride, but then I was like, get over it. I can curse here, sorry.
So
I know. I was like, just get over it. I'm like, we're family. And like the thought of you having to drive Uber after putting in like a super long day at work is crazy to me and I don't want you to do it. But like, we shouldn't have to deal with a system like this, you know?
Yeah.
And a 73-year-old shouldn't have to be driving Uber to make ends meet. This is insane.
Super positive lady. She's like, come sit in the front with me, it's fine. But she told me stories about people that drove with her and a guy who came out to, it was in, he came out because his friends were like, come move to San Francisco with us. And she told me the story about this guy who was like, he was supposed to stay for a month and he left after a week. He's like, I just can't do it. It's just so expensive and it's so difficult. And her trailer park, they raised the rent like by $800 on her when she moved out, on that place when they moved out. Because even the trailer parks,
oh my God,
which every developer is chomping at the bit to turn into multi-unit condos for new Uber employees in the corporate office.
Oh my God.
That kind of stuff is happening all over the place. And there's no plan to deal with humans. So that's one story. The other story is of a guy I know, we'll call him Pete. Pete is a really nice guy. He, I would say, he looks like a corduroy jacket was hit by lightning and became a person. He's wealthy, he's from New England. Family, I think, is wealthy, but he just seems like he comes from money and he's got floppy hair and he's like kind of an artsy guy, but yeah, smart guy. Went to Stanford, very, very good guy. In 2005, he took an internship with a tech company called Facebook. And his job for a few hours a week was to look at uploads on the network and click porn or not porn. And that was fun because sometimes it was porn. That was his job, did it for a few hours a week, did it for a few months, maybe 6 months, and then he was done with it. And he moves away.
Yeah.
And for the next 8 years, Pete is a ski bum in the Rocky Mountains. He teaches, this is a guy who when we went on a bachelor party was like, do you want any elk? I have elk. And do you want any Coke? I have Coke. Elk and Coke guy. Floppy haired, corduroy, color splat. He was killer at weddings. Pete.
Sloppy Pete.
Good guy, really nice guy, really earnest, clicked porn, not porn. 8 years, just skied, taught a little English tutoring on the side. And about a year ago, he gets a phone call.
I have to ask a question.
Yeah.
So how did he make money in those 8 years? Like just by tutoring?
Skiing.
Oh,
he was a ski guy.
Got
and I don't know how he made money.
Yeah.
He might have gotten it from his family. Might have gotten it just slanging some Coke, hunting some elk, selling some elk. I don't know, but he was living he wanted to be he didn't teach preschool, he didn't drive any Ubers. He just was a ski bum in Jackson Hole. And he gets a phone call saying, hey, what do you want to do with your shares? What shares? Your Facebook shares. I have Facebook shares? How many Facebook shares do I have? Not that many compared to the grand scheme of Facebook shares. Just about $1.5 million worth of Facebook.
Yeah.
Sells some of them. It's a down payment on a house, and his house has a view of the ocean. It's on a bluff. It has a deck. And it has basically when you look out of it, you just feel like you're in like the Coldwater Creek, like those those catalogs that 50-year-old white moms shop from when they want something comfy and cozy.
Yeah.
And they want to put their
Fluffy
hands.
throw.
Yeah, you want the kind of giant cappuccino mug that has no handle on it, and you just sit there in a knit blanket, looking out, being like, Basically, where Sharon Stone lived in Sliver or whatever. That's where and those are two stories.
Do you ever wonder, like,
from reunion weekend? That's how the world works.
So when you get older, right, you start like letting go of some of your dreams. I don't know if dreams is the right word, but you have like these ridiculous visions when you're younger of like what your life is gonna be like and what you're gonna have and the type of house you're gonna live in. And then every year as you get older, your expectations become more and more realistic. And now I find myself asking myself internally, like, and it happens regularly, especially when it starts getting cold. Will I ever have a deep soaking bathtub? Will it ever happen? Like for me, that's always been like, I mean, this is the bare minimum, right? But like, it's amazing because people live in there's like the 73-year-old woman who's worried about rent in the trailer park community that she lives in, right? And that's like a survival thing, right? That's just like having housing, period.
As she's like helping mold young minds.
Exactly, yeah. And then there are people in the middle like me who are like ungrateful little whiny bitches who are like, am I gonna have my bathtub? Like, fuck my bathtub, who cares? And then there are, no, but seriously, and then there are people who, I mean, look, your friend did the internship and he had the shares and it's like, it's a lucky moment, But it does give you a sense of how Americans are living in different worlds, really, when it comes to their financial stability.
There have always been two Americas. It's so sad, like John Edwards, worst person. But like one of the messages of his campaign was there are two Americas. And it plays out like, it's tough to say, but like reunion weekend, the people who were rich are rich. The people who don't know those things they tell you about finance and whatever, they're not. But there's just ways. There's people. A lot of it is folks don't know how the world actually works, and it sucks. People know when they're getting screwed by the way the world actually works, and people who are benefiting from the world actually works, from how the world actually works. They know that that's how the world works, and they know that that it's screwing other people, but they have very little incentive to really be like, hey, by the way. That's why it's interesting to see like the Hanauers of the world, and to a certain extent the Steyers of the world, just be like, hey, I'll tell you. But I had dinner with some folks, with a guy who made a lot of money, and he was like, yeah, I should pay a wealth tax. I need to pay a wealth tax. It is dumb for me not to, and a lot of rich people want to pay the wealth tax. And I asked him, I was like, who are the holdouts among your group of friends and cohort? And him, more or less, is opposed to a wealth tax. It's the people who aren't as rich as him, who think that they're gonna get that internship that turns in the porn internship that turns into $1 million, that don't want that to affect them when inevitably they hit the lottery. And that's just not how the world works. And those same people who want to make America great again and restore America to the point it was in pick a year, ignore the fact that the tax code around that time invariably was way more progressive than it is now. And all they're talking about is just like racial stuff.
You're 100% right. That came up in my debate with Tommy. And by the way, now I just use her first name because like her last name is weird to pronounce. It's Laren, and I
Loren.
No.
It's Rafe Loren.
Don't do that to Sophia, okay?
Sophia Loren.
But anyway, that came up and I was like, yeah, the top marginal tax rate in America when there was like the most prosperity and opportunity for everyone was 91%. Top marginal tax rate, 91%. How insane is that? And now we're dealing with like an insanely low corporate tax rate And then when you take loopholes into consideration and deductions into consideration, it's even lower than the 21% that Trump put it at with his tax bill. It's just so frustrating. And you're right, the people who stand to benefit from increasing taxes on the wealthy, including a wealth tax and increasing the increasing the top marginal tax rate, like they're against it because they have these like the same dumb visions that I had when I was a kid, when I thought I was gonna be like a freaking billionaire at this point. So unrealistic. It's unrealistic if you are, see, this is what I'm mad about with my parents and with my schooling and everything. Like everyone lied to me, right? Everyone tells you like if you're a good person and you work hard enough, you'll get to blah. But like, no, that's not true. You have to do things that honestly require a questionable character in order to become that wealthy. Not in all cases, but I think in a lot of cases.
Well, it depends, yeah.
Because think about it, it's not just about earning a high salary, it's also about how you invest your money. And what type of companies do you need to invest in order for your money to grow? What are the most profitable companies? You know what I'm saying? Like, and I just can't do it. Like I can't put my money in private prisons and shit.
Well, that's what
like that.
So when I think of progressivism, I think ground rules. And I think, because that's what it is. Progressivism was born in an era where there was a fire in a factory and there were no fire escapes and people were like, dude, we should have ground rules. There should be things that are set up. And that's why I think that the tax system should be such that even if you're shady getting there, once you get there, the tax system makes sure that things are corrected for.
Sure.
But like that's the thing is I can only set the ground rules.
Yeah.
What am I gonna do? Go up to you and be like, don't do that kind of stuff. Yeah. Anyways, we're out of time. We got to do the national story.
Okay, fine.
It's good. It's a good story.
Yeah, it is a good story. We'll do it fast. So the Nationals won the World Series last night, and Donald Trump was not at the game. However, they showed a commercial that included Trump at the game, and here's what the reaction looked like.
And they did it. Amazing. You've been such a gracious fan tonight. Tell me what your thoughts are about this World Series win.
I think this is huge for DC. DC needed this. We got some asshole in the fucking White House right now.
No. Well, let's go. We don't need that. We're all happy for the Nats, and everybody's had lots of drink down here at Mission Bar.
Man, many comments about this. First of all, just about the game itself. Isn't it kind of interesting how the Nationals don't need Bryce Harper?
Oh wow, here's something that happens at TYT very often is Anna, who is married to a professional baseball player, really wants to score points as being a person who knows baseball stuff.
I do know some baseball stuff.
And that Bryce Harper thing is true, I forgot it. Now the tagline is like, it's amazing what you can do with good pitching. That's the tagline for the Nationals. But I love that. So that was after they won the World Series, and then they just do those kinds of interviews that you do on the street. And of course, someone's gonna be just kind of like that, especially because they booed him at the game when he attended it in DC.
Yes, so they booed him when he attended it, and then my open to the story was a little incorrect because I should have given you more context into the video we showed you. But nonetheless, what I was referring to earlier is the video that we're gonna show you now, right? Yeah. Okay, so take a look. That really warms my heart.
Someone yelling, fuck him up!
I think he said lock him up.
Oh, that makes more sense.
Yeah, because that's what they've been chanting. And then remember, Frank Luntz was like, oh, there should be consequences for people chanting lock him up. But it's like, what are you gonna do? You're gonna go find all the people who chanted that and put them in prison, you weirdo?
Of all the horrible things that Frank Luntz has been responsible for, that is one of the scariest.
Yeah, definitely. And like, was he saying the same thing when people were chanting lock her up during Trump's?
No, because he's the kind of guy responsible for coming up with the messaging that resonates with people and having folks. I mean, Frank Luntz is the kind of guy. He's the pollster that has been responsible for a lot of the creepy messaging that's come out of the Republican Party. He's the kind of person whose job it is to find out what Trump should say, and before Trump, what Republicans should say that's easy for people in audiences watching those folks to repeat. And lock her up is what he's responsible for. And when it comes back to bite him in the ass, he's like, oh, let's hold those folks responsible. What are you gonna do? You gonna go out and arrest people who are just repeating back your stupid words?
Frank Putz, am I correct?
I know some facts about Frank Luntz. Anatomically, he's not gonna be too happy that I know.
Oh, really? How do you even know?
Yeah, he's got, I don't know. I know. I shouldn't have said that, but that's for members.
Okay.
Speaking of members. Anyway, so I've had a few to drink. Watch the Happy Half Hour.
Yeah, guys, check out Happy Half Hour. It's a good way to decompress after the, sometimes depressing news that we cover in the main show. But today's show was great. I really had fun on today's show.
Yeah.
It was a good mix of serious and fun. Like, I wish we could strike that tone every episode, but it's not easy. Like, it really depends on what the news of the day is and what we get to. We did every story we prepped today.
It's awesome.
Such a good feeling. I hate it when we don't get to the entire rundown.
Yeah. Did you feel like you missed anything?
Well, I actually don't, but there might have been a story that didn't come across, didn't come to my attention that we didn't include in the rundown. You never know, right? But from what I've seen in the news today, I'm glad we covered what we covered. I'm glad we got that, Afghanistan death squad story in. That was important. I'm glad we had fun with Melania hating Trump. We talked about impeachment. We talked about everything today.
Nice.
A little bit of Bernie Sanders sprinkled in.
Good for you.
Love it.
Good for you. I wanted to say one more thing about Frank Luntz, but I forgot. Oh no, it's just interesting. I like that because, so that video that we saw, the second one, they were screening the game at National Stadium, or where the Nationals play in DC, even though the game was in Houston. So Trump ended up getting booed at a game he didn't even attend.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that.
Pretty amazing.
It is pretty amazing. All right, guys, have a very happy Halloween. I hope you're having fun with your loved ones, passing out candy, which I'm gonna do with my niece in just a few. And thanks, Brett. Thanks for doing the post game with me. All right, guys, we'll see you soon.